Hello and welcome to Kakaaki, the African Voice on Africa Independent Television. I am Adora Sidney Jack. How was your weekend? Well, for some, it was on a tragic note. An airstrike by the Nigerian Air Force, NAF, has reportedly struck a border market in the northeast with several civilians feared dead. Now, NAF has confirmed the bombings but did not disclose that civilian casualties were recorded. But some say it has also launched an investigation into reports of civilian casualties during Saturday's military airstrike on Gili Market along the Borno-Yobe border. The incident occurred at the local market between Gubio local government area in Borno and Gedem local government area in Yobe during an operation targeting suspected Boko Haram insurgents. Not surprisingly, the story is on the front pages of majority of Nigerian newspapers this Monday and is sure to gain our attention during our newspaper review later on in the program. Well, now, the Nigerian Center for Disease Control and Prevention, NCDC's report has revealed that the country recorded 663 confirmed cases and 167 deaths from Lassa fever between January and March 2026 alone. The situation report for week 13, which is March 23 to 29, released yesterday, showed that the disease continues to pose a major public health challenge despite a decline in new infections. Now, NCDC confirmed 26 new cases in week 13, a drop from the 51 reported in the previous week. 7 states, including Edo, Bauchi, Ondo, Taraba, Ebonyi, Benue, and Kaduna, accounted for the new infections. Now, the Lagos state government over the weekend issued a public health alert on Lassa fever, announcing the commencement of a statewide awareness and prevention campaign. State Commissioner for Health, Akin Abayomi, who made this public, said he's particularly concerned about the number of fatalities. Now, although Lagos is not considered endemic, its large population and perhaps high mobility levels increase vulnerability to rapid disease transmission like this, and especially through imported cases. Now, this Monday on Kakaaki, we will attempt to perhaps trace the origin of this latest Lassa fever outbreak and what needs to be done to tame this current outbreak and to perhaps eventually kick the disease out of Nigeria for good. Joining us to do this, of course, is infectious disease epidemiology professor Adamu Akiala, who is going to join us, and also Director of Global Health and Infectious Disease Control Institute at Nasarawa State University, KEFI. Now, away from that, an interesting yet very increasingly troubling story. The paramount Pan-Igbo Social-Cultural Organization, Ohaneze Ndigbo, and the federal government last week moved to ban the conferment of Eze Ndigbo titles in foreign lands, following rising tensions, of course, in countries like Ghana and South Africa, where such coronations have sparked backlash, protests, and some cases outright violence. In 2025 in Ghana, for instance, tensions escalated to the point where some local groups issued quick notices to Nigerians over perceived cultural imposition. And while recently in the East London, of course, we saw that in the area of South Africa, the situation escalated further as the installation of an Eze Ndigbo was perceived by some as a challenge to local traditional authority, while the institution of Eze Ndigbo abroad was originally defined and designed as a unifying leadership structure and a way to perhaps organize and represent Igbo communities in foreign lands, and perhaps the South African authorities and some traditional structures in Ghana or elsewhere, crowning a king, even symbolically speaking, might be interpreted not as a challenge to indigenous authority structures as opposed to a mere cultural expression. What lessons can be learned from this saga to ensure that Nigerians in diaspora avoid issues capable of stoking unnecessary tensions with members of their host communities? Is the Eze Ndigbo institution abroad misunderstood? Did diaspora communities mismanage its symbolism? Are host countries overreacting, some would say, or justified in what seems like an effort to protect their territorial integrity? Now, these are some of the questions we shall put to Chief William Ezugu, a first-class traditional ruler from Enugu State and also a prominent civil society and political figure. And that, of course, will be an interesting conversation for us to have, to bring all the dynamics to the in-between the lines. But remember, remember that you can be part of the program, of course, by sending your views and comments to all our social media handles on Facebook, X, Instagram, and of course, YouTube at Africa Independent. So you can stay up to date and give us your feedback, waiting in the newspaper review, and of course, give us your highlights, of course, what you think about the show. But in the meantime, let's travel around the world with Kakaaki World News, and that's what's coming up shortly. Stay with us. You're welcome to Kakaaki World News this morning. And after a diplomatic team led by Vice President J.D. Vance tried and failed to reach a negotiated agreement to end the U.S. war with Iran on Saturday, U.S. President Donald Trump has decided his next move, and that came on Sunday morning in a series of social posts. Now, Trump says the U.S. will impose a naval blockade of Iran, and he wrote that no one who pays an illegal toll will have safe passage on the high seas, he wrote.
Donald Trump says that the U.S. will continue clearing mines from the Strait of Hormuz in order to ensure a safe passage for Allied shipping. He added that the U.S. military was locked and loaded and prepared to resume attacks against Iran at an appropriate moment. He went on to say that while progress had been made in the 20-hour negotiations in Islamabad, Iran will not meet the U.S.'s demand that it abandon its nuclear ambitions. The view was contradicted somewhat by a U.S. official familiar with Vance's negotiations who spelled out a much longer list of disagreements, including on Iran's control of Hormuz and its support for regional proxies with Houthi rebels in Yemen and Hezbollah in Lebanon. Analysts say while Trump's latest post didn't have the apocalyptic bluster of last week's threat to end Iranian civilization, they pose a number of new challenges and risks for the American side. On CBS's Face the Nation program, Republican Congressman Mike Turner of Ohio, who until last year chaired the House Intelligence Committee, said the blockade is means to force a resolution to the situation in Hormuz. Many believe the key U.S. objectives, such as keeping open the Strait of Hormuz, securing greater freedom for the Iranian people, and permanently ending Iran's nuclear program, remain unmet. Overwhelming bipartisan majorities feel it's important for the U.S. to achieve these goals. The conflict has become a test of wills of Iran's ability to endure continued U.S. and Israel attacks versus Trump's tolerance for the economic and political pain the war has produced.
Now, a fragile ceasefire has allowed some economic activity to resume in Iran, with workers returning to businesses across major cities, including Tehran. However, the broader economic outlook remains bleak due to inflation, infrastructure damage, and ongoing restrictions.
In Tehran's Grand Bazaar, more shops have reopened compared to the height of the conflict, but commercial activity remains significantly reduced. Merchant reports sluggish sales and rising prices, with some goods increasing by up to 30% since earlier in the year. Internet restrictions imposed during the conflict have further compounded economic challenges, cutting off digital income streams and limiting access to global markets. Many online businesses have seen operations grind to a halt due to connectivity limitations. The government has defended the restrictions as necessary for security, while promising limited support for selected digital enterprises. However, uncertainty persists over how most businesses will survive without broader access to reliable internet services. Damage to key infrastructure, including factories, transport networks, and energy facilities, is expected to have long-term consequences for economic recovery. Analysts warn that rebuilding efforts could take years, even if hostilities fully cease. With sanctions still in place and no clear resolution to the nuclear dispute, Iran faces a prolonged period of economic hardship. The ceasefire has offered temporary relief, but structural challenges continue to weigh heavily on the country's future.
Now, more strikes have occurred in Lebanon as Israeli military strike across southern Lebanon have killed at least 18 people, escalating tensions in a conflict that has already claimed over 2,000 lives. The attacks targeted multiple regions, including areas near Sidon and the Nabitieth district, causing civilian casualties and damage.
Lebanon's health ministry confirmed that several victims included emergency workers, underlining the humanitarian toll of the strike. The ongoing violence follows Hezbollah involvement in support of Iran, which triggered a large-scale Israeli military response. Clashes on the ground have also resulted in injuries among Israeli forces, with reports indicating soldiers wounded during engagement with Hezbollah fighters. The fighting reflects an intensifying confrontation along the southern Lebanese border. Diplomatic efforts are underway with planned talks involving Lebanon, Israel, and the United States expected to address ceasefire possibilities. However, Hezbollah has firmly rejected direct negotiations, complicating efforts to de-escalate the conflict. Public sentiment in Lebanon remains deeply divided as protests erupted in Beirut opposing any talks with Israel. Demonstrators expressed strong resistance to normalization, while political factions called for stability and avoidance of internal division. Meanwhile, regional tensions persist despite a U.S.-Iran ceasefire agreement, with uncertainty over whether it applies to Lebanon. Conflicting signals from Tehran, Washington, and Israel continue to cloud the path towards a broader resolution.
Now, Russian President Vladimir Putin and Moscow tail Sergei Soyabyin joined worshippers to attend an Orthodox Easter service in Moscow. The head of the Russian Orthodox Church, Patriarch Kirill, officiated a service in Moscow's Cathedral of the Christ the Savior Church.
Orthodox Christians celebrated Easter on Sunday in Russia, as well as in Moscow-controlled regions of Ukraine and along the front line. People attended church services and enjoyed traditional Easter foods, including dyed eggs and kulych, a cylindrical yeast cake decorated with icing. Russian soldiers fighting in Ukraine also attended prayer services held at the front line and received Easter cakes baked by military bakers and volunteers. During the Easter Mass, head of the Russian Orthodox Church, Patriarch Kirill, thanked President Putin for personally ordering the transfer of Vladimir and Donskaya icons of the Mother of God to the Russian Orthodox Church. Prior to transfer, the Vladimir and Donskaya icons of the Mother of God has been held at the Tetyakov Gallery. Putin's attendance of the Orthodox Easter service comes following his announcement of a temporary Easter ceasefire in Ukraine starting Saturday. According to the Kremlin, a 32-hour ceasefire over the Orthodox Easter weekend will last from 4 p.m. Saturday until the end of Sunday. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov described Putin's move as a humanitarian gesture, but said Moscow remains focused on a comprehensive settlement based on its long-standing demands, a key sticking point that has prevented the two sides from reaching an agreement.
Now, polling stations in Peru opened their doors on Sunday for the general election, in which Peruvians will choose their next president from an unusually large field of 35 candidates, hoping that the winner will be able to lead the fight against rising crime. Now, the South American nation also elects a bicameral Congress for the first time in 30 years, with 130 deputies and 60 senators set to reshape the balance of power in Peru.
Presidential candidates voted on Sunday in Lima as the country makes their pick in the general election for next president from an unusually large field of 35 candidates amid concerns about crime, corruption, and the country's persistent political instability. Sunday's election is taking place during a surge in violent crime and corruption, fueling widespread discontent among voters who largely view candidates as dishonest and unprepared for the presidency. Many of the candidates have responded to the crime concerns, with wide-ranging proposals, including building mega prisons, restricting food for prisoners, and reinstating the death penalty for serious crimes. Voting is mandatory for Peruvians from the ages of 18 to 70. More than 27 million people are registered, and of those, about 1.2 million are expected to cast ballots from abroad, mainly in the United States and Argentina. A candidate needs more than 50% of votes to win outright. However, a runoff in June is virtually assured given the deeply divided electorate and the pool of candidates, the largest in the Andean country's history. The Senate will be a powerful chamber that cannot be dissolved, but can remove the president with 40 votes and appoint key officials overseeing the economy and justice system. Despite a record 35 candidates, none is favored to win outright, according to polls. Private polls show right-wing candidate Keiko Fujimori leading voter preferences after pledging to deploy the armed forces to fight crime and build new prisons.
Now from Peru to Hungary, where Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban conceded defeat on Sunday after what he called a painful election result, ending 16 years in power for a powerful figure in the far-right movement allied with U.S. President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin. Now, initial official results show opposition leader Peter Magyar's party dominating the election. He congratulated the victorious party and pledged to serve the Hungarian nation from opposition as well. Now, Hungarian opposition leader Peter Magyar said that Prime Minister Viktor Orban conceded defeat in Sunday's election in a phone call in a bombshell election with repercussions across Europe and beyond. Now, Magyar posted on Facebook saying, "Prime Minister Viktor Orban just congratulated me on the phone on our victory." Orban, in power for 16 years, was defeated by opposition leader Peter Magyar, and early official results show Magyar's party leading Orban's. Now to Iraq. Iraq's parliament has elected Nizar Ahmadi as president, bringing an end to months of political deadlock that had stalled government formation. Now, the vote marks a significant step towards restoring institutional stability. Ahmadi secured a decisive victory in the second round of voting, reflecting broad parliamentary support. His election fulfills a constitutional requirement that had been repeatedly delayed due to political realignments. The new president assumes office at a time of heightened regional tension following the recent U.S.-Israel conflict with Iran. Iraq has been directly affected by spillover violence involving armed groups. Attention now shifts to the establishment of a new government, with a prime ministerial nomination expected to be the next major political challenge. Under Iraq's system, the role is reserved for a Shia Muslim candidate. Now, political alliances remain fragile, with competing factions vying for influence in the selection process. Now, external influence, including from the United States, has also shaped the political landscape. Ahmadi now faces the task of navigating these complexities while promoting national unity and governance reforms. His leadership will be critical in determining Iraq's stability in the months ahead. Now, Ireland, however, is grappling with a deepening fuel crisis as nationwide protests and blockades disrupt supply chains and transport networks. Now, the government has scheduled an emergency cabinet meeting to address the escalating situation. Hundreds of petrol stations have run out of fuel after days of coordinated blockades involving farmers and haulers. The protests have significantly restricted access to key infrastructure, including refineries and ports. Law enforcement agencies have intervened to clear blockades, with operations involving the use of pepper spray and support from defense forces. Authorities confirmed multiple arrests and warned that such actions are illegal. Critical services are under pressure as fuel shortages begin to affect emergency response capabilities. The National Emergency Coordination Group has raised concerns over supplies for ambulances and fire services. Transport disruption has spread across the country, affecting public services and access to major airports. Officials have advised travelers to expect delays while freight congestion worsens at key ports. Now, the crisis has been worsened by global oil supply disruptions linked to tensions in the Middle East. Rising fuel prices and supply constraints continue to fuel public frustration and prolong the protest. Now, more than 500 individuals have been arrested in central London during a protest linked to support for Palestinian action. The demonstration in Trafalgar Square drew large crowds despite warnings from the Metropolitan Police about potential legal consequences. Authorities confirmed that arrests were made on the basis of alleged support for a proscribed organization under terrorism laws. The protests, organized by Defender juries, aim to challenge the continued enforcement of the group's ban. Participants carried placards expressing solidarity and opposition to government policies, signaling ongoing resistance despite legal risk. The event followed a reversal in policy strategy, with officers resuming arrest after earlier indications of restraint. The ban on Palestinian action introduced in 2025 remains under legal challenge, despite a court ruling declaring it unlawful. Enforcement is continued pending appeal, placing demonstrators in a legally uncertain position. Now, among those arrested was Robert Del Naja, a founding member of Massive Attack, highlighting the high-profile nature of the protest. Many participants indicated willingness to face arrest as part of a broader campaign for protest rights. The scale of arrest adds to more than 2,200 detentions linked to the group since the ban was enacted. Legal proceedings for many cases remain on hold as courts continue to examine the legitimacy of the designation. Back in Nigeria, the Nigerian Air Force has confirmed carrying out airstrikes in the border market in Yobe State, with scores of civilians feared dead. The spokesperson of the Nigerian Air Force, Air Commodore Ehimen Ejodame, who confirmed the incident, described the operation as a precision bombing targeting terrorist locations in the Gili axis of the state. Now, in a statement signed by the spokesperson, Ejodame said the operation was part of a coordinated air-ground mission with troops of the Nigerian Army following the destruction of terrorist hideouts in the area. Now, although the Air Force did not disclose the number of civilian casualties, it confirmed that injured survivors were evacuated to hospitals within the area, including facilities in Gedem for treatment. Meanwhile, the councillor of Gili Ward in Gedem, Ibrahim Gedem, has called on residents to donate blood to support the victims receiving medical care. This development adds to a history of controversial air operations in the insurgency-ravaged northeast and other parts of northern Nigeria where insurgency, banditry, and communal conflicts persist. It also marks another incident of airstrikes affecting civilian populated areas following similar occurrences in Sokoto and Kaduna State. Now, the air component of Joint Task Force Operation Hadin Kai has neutralized a terrorist logistics hub and enclave in a precision airstrike at Gili in Gubbio local government area of Borno State. Now, the force also arrested the suspected terrorist logistics courier identified as Tuja Bulu in Ngamdu village of the state. In a statement signed by the Media Information Officer Headquarters Joint Task Force Northeast, Operation Hardin Kai, Lieutenant Colonel Sani Uba, the suspect reportedly confessed to participating in the April 9 attack that led to the death of Brigadier General Hussein Ibrahima in the Ben Sheikh area of Borno State. The statement added that the operation, which led to the arrest, also resulted in the neutralization of members of the Islamic State West Africa province, ISWAP, along with their logistics vehicle. According to the statement, the suspect, Turja Bulu, had been dispatched by ISWAP from Gili, where several fighters were said to be hiding to deliver food supplies to another group of terrorists operating around the Magumeri-Gubbio general area of the state. Lieutenant Colonel Oba said the success followed a carefully planned, intelligence-driven operation that culminated in a precision airstrike on a known terrorist enclave and logistics hub near the abandoned village of Gili in Gubbio local government area. Now, he explained that the strike was executed after sustained intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance missions over the Bindul-Gili axis, an area identified as a major corridor for terrorist movement and coordinated coordination by ISWAP fighters and their collaborators. The military recalled that in January 2026, troops moving from Gubia towards Damasak were hit by an improvised explosive device attack along the Bindu route, resulting in the death of 8 soldiers while several others were injured. Now, more recently, on April 9, coordinated attacks were carried out in Gamdu and Ben Sheikh, reportedly supported by same terrorist logistics network. Now, Governor Dauda Lawal has expressed deep grief and sorrow over the tragic bandits' attack on communities in Bukuyum local government area, which claimed the lives of at least not less than 11 innocent people and left many others dead. The governor described the night assault on Bankosao Yagalma in Zarumai ward and Dongondaji in Adabka ward as a heartbreaking and senseless act of violence against defenseless citizens. In a statement issued by his spokesperson, Suleiman Idris, Governor Lawal extended his heartfelt condolences to the bereaved families, sharing in their pain during this moment of immense loss and devastation. Now, according to Idris, the governor has directed the immediate deployment of a high-level delegation led by the deputy governor to convey condolences, provide support to affected families, and ensure prompt medical attention for the injured. He also reassured the people of Zanfara State of the government's commitment to intensifying efforts to safeguard lives and restore peace across all communities. Now, the United Nations is drawing a direct link between Zamfara's vast mineral wealth and the state's relentless battle with banditry. UN Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed made the revelation during a one-day official visit to Gusau, warning that the region's rich resources are fueling its insecurity.
For a critical briefing on the state's sustainable development goals. Happiest day for Yeah, Governor Lawan detailed his administration's rescue agenda, highlighting upgrades in healthcare, education to combat the crisis directly. Lawan revealed new high-tech command and control center is now active to track bandit operations.
We're also strengthening community intelligence and protection system, establishment of the Community Protection Guard. Based on the legislation from the State Assembly, we were able to form our own internal security, which we'll call CPG.
While applauding the state drive for investment, Mohammed told his host that there is no sustainability development without lasting peace.
Peace is what you need today for people to come. And I think that the narrative for Zanfara is about conflict. And that conflict is related to minerals, solid minerals. And that has to change. And then when they do come, your human development indices are very low. And so one has to find ways of investing in that.
With Zanfara grappling with 78.8% of poverty rates and over 82% of its 5.3 million residents relying on agriculture, the UN chief stressed that the entire North must unite to stop northern Nigeria from falling further behind. Damina Yusuf, AIT News, Gusau.
That's World News on Kakaaki, the African Voice. Now let's see what business is telling us from across Nigeria. Stay with us.
Welcome to Kakaaki Business. Top finance officials from around the world will convene in Washington this week under the shadow of war in the Middle East, which has delivered a third major shock to the global economy after COVID-19 pandemic and Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022. Top International Monetary Fund and World Bank officials last week said they would downgrade their forecast for global growth and raise their inflation prediction as a result of the war, warning that emerging market and developing countries will be hit hardest by higher energy prices and supply disruptions. Before the Iran war broke out on February 2028, both institutions had expected to lift growth forecasts, given the resilience of the global economy, even in the wake of major tariffs imposed by U.S. President Donald Trump beginning last year. But the war has delivered a series of shocks that will slow progress on recovering growth and beating back inflation. The World Bank baseline estimate now projects growth in emerging markets and developing economies of 3.65% in 2026, down from 4% in October, but sees that number dropping as low as 2.6% if the war lasts longer. Inflation in those countries was now forecast to hit 4.9% in 2026, up from the previous estimate of 3%, and could spike as high as 6.7% in the worst case. Bank of Japan monetary policy could be an option to tame rising prices of boosting the yen, Japan's trade minister said on Sunday as the central bank weighs raising interest rates this month to counter inflation spurred by the Iran war. Ryosei Akazawa, Japan's top trade negotiator and head of Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry, was responding to an economist suggestion that a stronger yen would help offset higher crude oil import costs. Hideo Kumano, chief economist at the Daiichi Life Research Institute, said on the program on public broadcaster that if BOJ policy were used to strengthen the yen by around 10% to 15%, it could suppress price rises across the economy, including food, which accounts for a large share of household spending. Financial markets are pricing that the Bank of Japan Deputy Governor risk of inflation. Korea is close to securing crude oil supplies from Kazakhstan, the industry minister said, as the country looks for alternative energy sources amid the war in the Middle East. Earlier this month, Presidential Chief of Staff Kang Hong-sik traveled with Kim to Kazakhstan to secure supplies of crude oil and naphtha amid disruption to shipping through the Strait of Hormuz. South Korea, which is almost entirely dependent on import for its energy with 70% of oil purchases coming from the Middle East, also secured a pledge last month from the United Arab Emirates to supply 24 million barrels of crude oil. Saudi Arabia has restored full oil pumping capacity through the East-West pipeline to about 7 million barrels per day, it said on Sunday, days after providing an assessment of damage on its energy sector from attacks during the Iran conflict. The ministry said energy facilities and the pipeline affected by attacks during the conflict have recovered and restored operational capacity. Saudi did not specify who launched the attacks, but the kingdom has intercepted many Iranian missiles and drones in recent weeks. The strikes also disrupted operation at key oil, gas, refining, petrochemical and electricity sites in Riyadh, the Eastern Province, and Yanbu Industrial City. As Nigeria awaits the release of its March inflation figures, concerns are mounting over a possible reversal in the country's recent disinflation trend. Experts have now projected a fresh rise in headline inflation driven largely by escalating energy costs as a result of the Middle East crisis. Experts from several research groups have projected that Nigeria's headline inflation rate could rise to about 15.4% year-on-year in March, up from 15.06% recorded in February. The expected increase is being driven largely by escalating global energy costs linked to heightened geopolitical tensions in the Middle East, particularly in the ongoing strain involving the United States and Iran, which has disrupted oil and gas supply chains and pushed prices upward. For many Nigerians, however, the impact is already being felt long before the official figures are released.
Right now, there's a lot of things have skyrocketed. So a lot of things in the market, not only food items, many other things. Like presently, the fuel, these things is affecting the food chain, the chain of food distribution in the market.
Buy lesser because even the fuel, they just added money. So some of them will not come and buy because for them to transport from their houses to this place, instead of come, they prefer buying at home.
Small-scale businesses that rely on generators due to unstable electricity supply say the rising cost of diesel is eating deeply into their profit margins, forcing them to raise prices or cut operating hours. Analysts warn that these fuel-driven cost pressures are likely to reflect in the March inflation data, reinforcing concerns that the recent moderation in inflation may be reversed. The projected rise highlights growing worries that persistent global shocks and domestic cost pressures could further complicate efforts to stabilize prices and ease the burden on Nigerian households. The Nigeria Customs Service has been described as a critical gateway to Nigeria's economic expansion, rather than merely a gatekeeper with a strategic role in driving sustainable development. This formed part of discussions among trade experts and facilitators, where speakers emphasized the service's role in national development is often misunderstood despite its significant influence on trade facilitation.
Modern customs administrations are no longer confined to revenue generation and collection, but are pivotal institutions in enabling trade across borders, ensuring compliance. She cited ECOWAS, the African Continental Free Trade Area, for which I've seen one of the main drivers here, and just recently, the Nigerian Customs Service pioneered Customs Partnership for Africa's Trade.
Stakeholders at the events noted that modern customs systems go beyond revenue generation, also supporting environmental and economic sustainability through more efficient supply chains and reduced leakages from informal trade.
To international trade and sustainable development. And so I felt it was important for us to tell the story of customs and how we actually facilitate legitimate trade through the implementation of trade policies, government fiscal policies, as well as international law.
We all know that there's a connection between how efficient trade systems would reduce the time of trade, reduce transaction costs. And when that is done, the trade cycle is repeated and more revenue is collected or generated.
As Nigeria steps up efforts to modernize its trade ecosystem through digital platforms such as the National Single Window, industry experts said the initiative underscores the evolving role of the customs service beyond revenue collection, positioning it as a key institution in national development. And that's Kakaaki Business.
Thank you, Larry, for that business. Just talking about it, the African Development Bank approved $200 million for Nigeria's digital value chain infrastructure project, and that's to also increase our digital value and cyber optic. But talking about that, we move to sports, and Tim Bishime is standing by to bring us sports. Interestingly, Nigerians did not make the list of referees chosen for the World Cup again, striking out balance. Good morning, Simba.
Good morning, Adora. Yes, you just got that spot on. I mean, for most of us, it's not the shock because you don't have a proper structure. I mean, let alone you've not even participated on the African continent. Absolutely. Then FIFA, you shouldn't expect that. We shouldn't expect that.
We're asking for too much.
We're asking for too much. But hopefully it's to change in the coming years. I'm praying so.
I hope so.
Good morning, welcome to Kakaaki Sports. Well, as we know or may not know, so much happened in the world of football. Like you heard, Adora, one of the key things that happened, we now know the officiating referees that will be joining the FIFA World Cup from Africa. Nigeria is not part of it. But we'll not be getting into all that details. But however, a lot happened in the world of football, like I said earlier. And we'll be getting into some of those questions that have been raised in the minds of football fans. But before we get into all that analysis and conversations and questions to be answered by my guest, who is on standby now, let me quickly bring the news from Monte Carlo. They just concluded Monte Carlo ATP finals, where Yannick Sinner grabbed his first clay court ATP Masters 1000 title, defeating rival Carlos Alcaraz 7-6, 6-3 in challenging windy conditions. The high-profile encounter marked their first meeting since November, when Yannick Sinner emerged victorious in the Nitto ATP final. Well, the win did not only secure Yannick Sinner Monte Carlo crown, but also propelled him back to the world #1 in the ATP rankings. With 2 hours, 50 minutes triumph, he becomes just the second player after Novak Djokovic in 2015 to complete the Miami and Monte Carlo double, underlining dominance on the tour. Well, two greats. Tennis greats right there, and then one definitely had to prevail, and that one person was Yannick Sinner on the night that it was a very competitive one between Yannick Sinner and Carlos Alcaraz. Now we know he's back to #1 spot in the tennis ranking. Congratulations to him. And for the young lad, talking about Carlos Alcaraz, hopefully in the coming tournaments, we'll see that he gains back momentum, but he's doing great for his age, 21 years of age. He's doing great when it comes to tennis tournament. But yeah, that will not be our focus this morning. Back to the matter that matter. Yes, the matter that matter in the sense that a lot happened in the world of football. I will say it again. And then a lot of fans have been asking questions like, what is going on with our club? All those questions I have joining me right now, my guest, Abdukwadi Adebdapo. I hope I got your name, because I'm not used to that. I'm calling Asensio. But for the sake of, getting the audience to know who you are, Abdukwadi Adebdapo is his name, a.k.a. Asensio, on the streets of football, streets of sports. But good morning, welcome to Kakaaki Sports.
Good morning. It's a pleasure being on the show this lovely, lovely Monday morning.
Yeah, he's the debut guest on the show, so it's good to have you. Thank you so much, Asensio. I'll try to call you Diaspora now. All right, well, quickly, let's get right into it. Everything happened over the weekend. Let's start with the English Premier League. I mean, we saw that it was quite intense, disappointing, competitive, all that, adjective, or should I say verb to describe. It's not even enough. But your thoughts on March Day 32 results and as it concerns the title race and the English Premier League right now?
Well, I think this is why we love the English Premier League. There's a reason why it is called the most competitive league in the world. And many fans would have believed that we're in the month of April. Arsenal could have wrapped up the season in the month of March, especially how Manchester City played in back-to-back games against West Ham and Everton, where they dropped points, including against Nottingham Forest, where Manchester City were unable to take maximum points. And you look at Arsenal, they were cruising. It looked like everything was working for them. But after the loss, in the Carabao Cup final to City, it now looked like same old Arsenal. Of course, it's time for them to bottle the Premier League once again.
It's like a trending curse, a progressive curse.
I'm you see what happened over the weekend against Bournemouth. Now, personally, I think I was not surprised. I didn't see the loss coming, but I expected Bournemouth to go to the Emirates Stadium and get something, especially when they've got a manager like Andoni Iraola, who is not new, to games like this. This was a man that challenged Real Madrid and Barcelona, pushed them to the edge when he was in the Spanish La Liga. And he's beaten Mikel Arteta before. So if you put it band by band, Spanish managers by Spanish manager, he's got a little edge over Mikel Arteta technically. And he showed again why it could be spoilers. He did it last season, and he's doing it again. And when Arsenal, had that equalizer, you could see that Mikel Arteta was panicking. He made 3 substitutions. Yeah. I don't know why he had to take off the 3 players behind the strikers. And then all of a sudden, just before, Alex Scott scored that second goal for Bournemouth, Arsenal were preparing a defensive sub. It was Muscat was about to come in. It meant that even Mikel Arteta was not sure his boys was going to go for victory. Yeah. I'm happy to protect the 1-1 draw and then wait for the luck of probably set piece, they score from the corner or something to win the game. And when Bournemouth hit them for that second goal, it was clear Arsenal answer to it.
All right.
And it all
right. Okay, I hear you now. It's clear that Arsenal most likely will not win the trophy. I don't want to be the prophet of doom because we're looking at the table and it's just 6 points apiece, Manchester City, who have a game in hand. But now quickly, talking about Chelsea, we know now for sure that the English Premier League going to have 5 slots in the UEFA Champions League. And before we wrap up on the English Premier League, do you see Chelsea grabbing a continental slot after that massive loss against their opponents at Man City at Stamford Bridge?
Well, for Chelsea, there's only one word I would just probably say, that their fans are shameful. That's the word. The Chelsea fans should be ashamed of themselves. They should be disappointed in themselves, rather, because how do you, celebrate the fact that your side have lost, 3-0 at home just because you don't want Arsenal to win the title? I think that's quite shameful. That's quite disappointing. And it's something that their fans should not be happy about. They will miss the chance to play Champions League football next season. I think realistically, the only thing Chelsea can settle for right now, it's either a place in the Europa League or in the Conference League.
Okay, well, that are the current standing on the table. As you can see right there, Arsenal sits on top of it, but not clear when it comes to the EPL title race. And looking about the second place there, Man City, of course, taking that advantage there, going into the next match day, which they will face Arsenal. And it is just looking very intensive and competitive. We'll see what happens. If Man City gets to get the best of Arsenal at the Emirates, or perhaps they get to win all the rest of the games, it's not going to be an Arsenal trophy, but that is fingers crossed. We'll see what happens. Let's now move to the Nigerian Premier League. Also, matches went down, and it's quite interesting as well in the Nigerian Premier League. I mean, Enugu Rangers losing that, massive advantage to go top of the table or maintain the top spot. And Rivers United coming up back on top of the table. It's been back and forth between Rangers and Rivers. Your thoughts on the result and where you see this panning out at the end of match day 38 or 36?
I think it's going to be an interesting end to the MPFL season. We've got 4 games left in the MPFL. Now, Rivers United are on top as we speak of the MPFL. They've been favourite to win the league. In fact, Rivers have been favourite. Even when Remo Stars won the league last season, Rivers were still favourite to win the league. Finidi George has been able to build a team that is far above, that is little above, rather, the rest of the MPFL side, even though that team has not been able to compete favourably on the continent when it comes to representing Nigeria better. But for Rangers, it's not been too good for them. The last time they were at home, in the MPFL. They played at a draw against Bara FC, one of the surprise package of the MPFL season, and they couldn't take advantage of their home side. And for Rivers, they won, of course, by their usual scoreline, a 1-0 scoreline. It is becoming, a habit for Finidi George side to score a goal and then keep it sharp, keep it tight, I beg your pardon, at the back line. And that's how they've been able to rally and do well in the MPFL. But I think it's Rivers United title to lose. Even those Enugu Rangers somehow found themselves into the title race a couple of weeks ago. But I still stand strong and feel like it's going to be Rivers United who will win the MPFL. And then the fight for second will be between Ikorodu City and of course Enugu Rangers, who could just come around. Maybe Nassau United would have been in conversation, but when they failed to take maximum point against Kun Khalifa a couple of weeks ago in Lafayette, it was where it ended for me, and I think Rivers United are prime for the MPFL.
All right, talking about Ikorodu City, I can see you boldly putting on their jersey right there. I mean, it just shows solidarity, yeah? Okay, Ikorodu City, for you, I hope they get continental slot because it's quite shocking. But that's the current standing on the table, as we can see right there. Rivers United on top of it. Rangers International 2 points below Rivers United. And Ikorodu City, the new boys, not showing that they're not so new. They're here for big business. Staying there and fighting for continental slot. Abia Warriors in 4th place. Shooting Stars. And then there's Nassau United also. But again, like you heard Adedabo, he said it can't be anybody's game. So hopefully we'll see what happens. This looks like Rivers United will take this one home. But quickly now, from the Nigerian Premier League, let's touch on the Nigerian Women's Football League. I mean, it's also quite interesting. The round of 6, first stanza is almost here, wrapped up. And we've seen that Bayelsa Queens and Rivers Queens, Rivers Angels, I beg your pardon, have progressed to the Super 6, already booked their spot. So what it stands now is just 1 slot from the Group A and 3 more slots left to be filled in Group B. Your thoughts on this competitive Women's Football League in Nigeria at the moment?
Well, as competitive as the Women's Football League is this season, I'm one of those who believe that we've not built the Women's League the same way we've been able to scale the Men's League a bit. Yes, Bayelsa Queens, Rivers Angels are always there in the mix, and then the likes of Edo Queens will also come in. And sometimes you see Robo Queens also, do their thing. But good one for Bayelsa Queens and, of course, Rivers Angels for qualifying for the Super 6. But I ask myself this question every season as regards the NWFL, that what is the quality of play from the Nigerian Football League? How do these teams, qualify to represent Nigeria on the continent? We've seen it years upon years, that how our teams have struggled when they go onto the continental phase and play the Women's Champions League. They've not been impressive. On the league phase, it may be good, but for me, at this point, it should go beyond the NWFL. I'm happy the league is progressing. Games are going on. We're not seeing teams putting out at the middle side of the season, and teams are willing to complete the league phase, and that's a plus, and it's a good development. On the field of play, the football also look good. Off the field of play, we've had less issues as regards the NWFL, but beyond that, for me, I want to see a better competitive NWFL
on the continental front.
For 6, and I want to see the best side represent Nigeria on the continent. All
right, thank you so much. That's a good place to drop the conversation as regards to the Nigeria Women's Football League and every conversation we had this morning. Once again, good luck to Chelsea fans and to Arsenal fans and also to Rivers United and your Ikorodu City also. I did that for. But thank you so much for being a part of the show this morning. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure being on the show today.
All right, see you another time. All right, so quickly, before we wrap up the show this morning, let's quickly bring you fixtures from the ongoing Edo FA 2026 Presidential Cup. I mean, the FA Presidential Federation Cup, I beg your pardon, Edo State. These are the semi-finalists. After the quarterfinalists have been done and dusted, now we know who are going to be contending for glory when it comes to the 2026 Edo FA Cup. We have in the women's category, there's Spunky Blazers. Shockingly, the women's team, Edo Queens, will not be in this one. Spunky Blazers against Fortress Ladies will be going head-to-head for a place for that glory in that particular category. And then in the men's category, the Westgate FC versus Ines Stars FC. Then Bender Insurance, the defending champion of the FA Cup, will be up against St. Andrews. So we'll see what happens. Thursday is the date for these fixtures. And at the end of the day, Friday, we'll be back here to tell you who made it to the final of the 2026 Edo Presidential FA Cup. Well, on that note, we say thank you for being a part of the show this morning. But up next is the social intervention segment. Stay tuned. I am Simbishima.
To Get Fit in 60 Seconds with Dolly Phillips. Now, everyone has 60 seconds in every day to spare. So if you're ready, let's go! Hello! How are you doing today? Thanks for joining me, Dolly here again, for our 1-minute workout. So, what are we doing? They're called in and outs. This is the easy version. Just one knee to the chest, but if you want to go all out, that's the hard version. All right? Are you ready? Of course you are. Your time starts now. I'll start with the easy version, okay? Now, just keep your focus forward and push those knees to your shoulders. That's what you want to do. Now, if this is too easy for you, you want to step up your game. Come on, push both knees at the same time. Woo! Push, push, push. If you get tired here, just revert back to the easy version, all right? Let's work. Push, push. Oh, those abs are cooking. This is a pure ab workout. We get to work those hip flexors as well. Come on, I'm going to the easy version. 20 seconds left. Push, push, don't give up. Work those abs. But the last 10 seconds, all of us go to the hard one. Are we ready? 10, come on, 9, 8, 7, 6, push, 5, 4, 3, 2, and time. Well done. Well done. I hope you had a great workout. Anyway, what I need you to do is to follow us on Instagram at Alpha Fitness Studios and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Alpha Fitness Studios, for free workout videos, free dance videos, sales and promos, and make sure you join us at the gym, Alpha Fitness Studios in Lekki Phase 1 next time you're in Lagos. So until the next time, bye-bye.
Great people of Nigeria, welcome to the Leadership Clinic. Today, I'll be speaking on why the long listening to me today, and you want to become such a voice to reckon with. The opportunity that you have before you is to begin to build a process that is even the road less traveled. It is the pioneer road. It is the road of getting things done, because life is hard, life is serious, and that understanding changes everything. We need leaders who understand the process is important. We need leaders who know how to deal with failure. We need leaders who know how to handle rejection. We need leaders who are paid the price. Great people of Nigeria, you must remember, if a man doesn't have a purpose for waking up, sleeping becomes interesting.
Have you ever wondered if your child is stressed with homework? Too much homework can have a detrimental effect on your child. Your child now misses out of playtime. He or she doesn't have time to just be kids anymore. Your child is so bogged down. And since many of the assignments are simply busy work, learning now becomes a chore rather than a positive, constructive experience. Homework overload is also affecting family life. A lot of kids can't even make it to dinner. And as a result, the only interaction they have with their parents involves arguments about homework. You see, it is absolutely shocking to me to find out that particularly kindergarten pupils who are not supposed to have any homework at all are getting as much homework as pupils in primary and secondary school. Well, if you think your child may be receiving too much homework, talk with your child's teacher, because oftentimes teachers are unaware of the havoc that homework is causing. If that doesn't work, talk to the school administrator about the concern. He or she may approve and set policy changes. However, while you wait patiently for your child's teacher or school to take a decision, let me share the steps to help your kids deal with homework stress. First of all, remove distractions. Some children may take longer to do their homework because of television, smartphones, and other distractions. Allow your children to complete homework on their own. This will show the teacher the child's true progress and skill level, and let your child take a nap after school every day. Honestly, that's wonderful.
The issues as they break. The multitude. mood, the political figures, the state and non-state actors.
It's a serious threat to democracy.
And our government seem to be incapable of protecting
the scheming.
This is not a period we should say bow and go.
Every part of this country is equal.
The intrigue.
There can be no one person that is bigger than the party.
Deft moves and the momentous declaration.
We didn't get any protection.
I'm not particularly against anybody.
We track and capture them all.
I don't believe we go for that reason in politics.
Follow in-depth analysis and no-holds-barred interviews.
Armed forces of the country is well capable. They need the political will.
Are they just waking up from sleep? Is there complacency?
Feel the pulse of happenings in the political arena on AIT Democracy Today. Widely acclaimed authority on politics. Monday to Friday, 7 p.m. Nigerian time. Focus Nigeria. It's a huge task, but we take it on.
Ask him where is the law.
National Assembly is not doing hearing on insecurity in Nigeria. It is America that is doing hearing on insecurity in Nigeria.
Monday to Friday on Focus Nigeria, we identify the nagging issues.
So people put people in poverty deliberately, deliberate misplacement of priorities, and brought people on their knees to suffer.
We seek answers to the tough challenges.
And because of for the former president, yes, what I know is that he has not turned his membership card. He has not been attending your meeting.
Leave that to us to deal.
There's no shying away from the issues.
The system is held accountable. The leaders are accountable for the funds, for the resources that they manage.
No sitting on the fence.
The same thing that made you live where you are may confront you.
Focus Nigeria, 10 a.m., Monday to Friday on AIT.
Thank you for staying with us. It's now time for us to bring you newspaper review this morning, and it's quite a headline full on all the front pages this morning. Some tragic, some political, of course, some on insecurity. But I won't be doing this alone. I do have with me in the studio Lemi, where he is the CEO of Value Communications and, of course, a frontline newspaper reviewer. Good morning.
Good morning.
Lem, it's great to have you. And your tag team partner is virtually joining us, Chris Wanda. Chris, you've gone back to Lagos. You couldn't stay with us a bit more here. Good morning.
My people, good morning. How was the weekend?
Very well. How are you too? Good, bright and early. All right, so let's start with this morning's headlines, and we begin here on the note with Standard Times, and it's looking at scores fear dead as Nigerian Air Force airstrike hits busy market on Borno-Yobe border, and that's the lead story there for Standard Times, if you can look on your screen. Again, in disclosure news, we still do have that story running as the headline news on page 2, but it says over 50 die, scores injured as NAF airstrikes miss target, hit Borno-Yobe border market. Police Yobe government confirm multiple deaths, and that's what one of the riders are saying on the front line for that story. Now let's move to Daybreak this morning, and of course still breaking tragically, front page here. Daybreak, he's also writing about the over 50 killed, many injured as NAF air strike hits Borno-Yobe border market as their lead story. One of the riders also says NAF confirms airstrike, says operation based on credible intelligence, and that's what they have there as one of the riders, interestingly. But let's also look at Inquirer, the Abuja Inquirer here. It also looks at outrage as Air Force bombs market, scores killed. Air Chief orders investigation. Army Zulum ex-Chief of Army Staff defend strike, and that's what you find there on the front page newspaper of the Abuja Inquirer. But going to Daily Global, Daily Global is looking also at this, but it says here, over 50 traders feared dead as NAF airstrike hits Borno-Yobe border market. And it also tells you that story is on the front page of the Daily Global. But another story you also do see there, it's Hormuz blockade jolts oil markets, raises war risk. And that's what you see there with Army justifies airstrike amid civilian death report. Now, moving to the blueprint. Blueprint is still looking at NAF begins probe into accidental airstrike at Borno-Yobe border market. Scores feared, killed, many hospitalized. We have arrested logistics courier Tuja Bulu, and that's coming from Operations Harding Kaidi. And that's what you find on the blueprint. Some political stories there below that picture story. ADC may postpone convention as Supreme Court hears Mark's appeal Tuesday. Turaki-led PDP 2. And that's what you find there. But going over to this Nigeria, let's look at their lead story and how they have positioned their lead narrative. Now, what you find as their narrative here, it says deadly misfire. NAF probes Yobe airstrikes, scores killed. Military says terrorists main target. Amnesty International others demand thorough investigation. Deadly misfire. NAF probes Yobe airstrike, scores killed is the lead of this Nigeria. And also what you also find opposite the D-Stay masthead, Nigeria's Faba expansion receives African Development Bank's $200 million facility boost, which we mentioned earlier when we opened after business. Now, let's go to the Daily Monitor. Military Yobe government defend action as Amnesty ACF kick. And that's what you find as the lead story there as well. You also find Serap to Tinubu probe alleged 2.9 billion naira fraud in Niger-Comsat NNRA. And that's below that picture story of that bomb blast that happened, Bruno. Quite a sorry, tragic sight there on the front page of the Daily Monitor. But let's go over to the Observer's Times. And the Observer's Times is looking at this differently. Here it writes in lead, Zulum backs NAF airstrike, says strike targeted notorious terrorist logistics base. And here writer says Gili Gazabure market shut since 2021 over insurgent activities. And Yobe, Borno, Yobe military consulted before airstrike action. And that's on page 1. That's what you find there on the front page of Observer's Time. And with all the stories also making it round there, it's also some political stories with also another one that says federal government orders withdrawal of passports from Nigerians who renounced citizenship. Now let's go over to Daily Asset. And front page there, you see the Daily Asset talking about NAF airstrike. Says NAF airstrike hits Borno-Yobe boundary market, eliminates over 30 terrorists. Air Force attributes strike on intelligence, military probes, alleged civilian casualties. And that's on page 2 of the Daily Asset. You also want to look at that story again, bottom page of that. Kogi dismisses claims of ethnic exclusion in employment on page 23. Now, leading its way to leadership from that, we still see insecurity as the main header. Ex-IGP, CSOs, lawyers, others reignite calls for state police, and that's page 4. But not leaving out the picture story of what happened in Borno, you will find it right centered in the middle of the paper of the leadership there, and the story on the bottom page, airstrike hits terrorist civilians in Borno market, coming to you all the way on page 11. The Authority newspaper looks at Mark's ADC, ignores INEC, names Imoka to chair National Convention. It also looks at Aminu Tambuwal is deputy, Ajuji Ahmed secretary. And that's what you find there on the front page of the Authority newspapers. And, well, that story on page 3 may be respite for some people. Say Senate committee consoles Army over deaths of Brigadier General, others in Borno. And that's what you find on the front page of the Authority newspaper. Moving over to New Telegraph, we see New Telegraph there. ADC, David Mark's leadership is the status quo, Serge says or tells INEC. and that's how they're leading this morning. They're leading with some political news. ADC, David Mark's leadership is the status quo. Sage tells INEC, says eliminating competitive group from race breeds one-party state. ADC releases updated convention committee list, and that comes to you on page 2 and 9. The tragic story still from Bruno is bottom page, still talking about the numbers as 50. Over 50 feared there. There's now strike his Yobe border markets. And you also want to see terrorism story on page 4 and 5, still on New Telegraph, says terrorism, U.S. hails federal government over convictions of 386 Islamist militants. And that's what you find on page 4 and 5. Now let's look at another story. Daily Sun is rising with the ADC. ADC takes survival fight to Supreme Court. Apex Court hears Mark's appeal tomorrow. Kanu allocates 60% leadership structure to Kwakwanso, 40% to Legacy Party, others. And that's what you also want to see there. But some economic story opposite the masthead, $5 billion swap deal tightens Nigeria's debt knot. States still borrowing despite FAC windfall, and that's on page 25. Now going to the business Nigeria this morning, what we see here is some political story on election and electoral races. Hamzat Ambode Jandor step up mobilization as Lagos 2027 governorship race intensifies. Hamzat Ambode Jandor step up mobilization as Lagos 2027 governorship race intensifies. You also want to look at that, what's that story there? Investors split on bank stock overexposure in Nigerian forex portfolios, and that's on page 2 of the business Nigeria. And also look at that Nigerian News Direct, if we can go straight to that. CPPE warns World Bank recommendations on food imports could reverse economic gains. And that's what the Nigerian News Direct is saying right after the business Nigeria. If we can have Nigerian News Direct on the screen, we will find that the lead is talking about the World Bank recommendation on food imports could reverse economic gains. Now, Business Diary is looking at 90,000 fresh workers join new pension scheme. Interesting, as pension assets hit 29.4 trillion naira on page 2 of the Business Diary. You also want to see, another story there, bottom page story. Cash outside banks shrinks to 123.1 trillion naira, and that's on page 4. And you also want to see City demolish Chelsea at Stamford Bridge to ignite title charge. And that's some sports story front page. But let's look at the lead stories here. I'll come to you first. And, I come to you with a quote in mind by Bob Answorth. He said, "One is too many," meaning that too many deaths, have occurred. And some people have looked at what happened in Bruno. It's not just only bizarre, but tragic. But how do you look at this, considering the comeback from the military and, of course, the state government?
Yeah, as you remember that quote, I also remember the eminent British jurist, William Blackstone, who said, "It is better for 10 guilty persons to go scot-free, to escape," in his words, than for one innocent to suffer. Apparently, the military was doing surveillance. The military was tracking the movement of the Boko Haram insurgents from the information available to us. And the insurgents allegedly went into the markets to obtain levies and tax from traders. So it was in the process that fire was opened, as it were, or so. It doesn't seem accidental from the narrative we have. It seemed to have been targeted. But the military, especially the Air Force, have the precision device to now zero in on the terrorists. One, if the terrorists went into the market to receive levies, to collect levies from traders, they definitely will not be centralized at a spot. That means they will go spread themselves across and go from shop to shop. So it makes it very difficult for a strike of that nature to be conducted, that it will not affect civilian casualties as we have. So I would be wondering why, if they could track them to get to the markets, why they did not maybe wait for them to also be going back to wherever they are coming from with their booties, with the levies they had collected before you can open fire. Because in a marketplace where there are civilians, definitely this is the result you would get if there is an airstrike. So it's really of worry. It's really of worry, the decision to open fire in a market, except if they thought that it was only the insurgents that were there. But the information is that they are going to collect tax. So that is a matter of grave concern that should be investigated. We know that the military is doing Herculean task of trying to keep the country safe. But in doing that, it is important that we take all necessary precautions to ensure that civilian casualties are, reduced to the barest minimum. There will always be collateral damage, but if it is done with a deep sense of responsibility and we are meticulous, then we will reduce to the barest minimum. While the generality of the papers are talking about 50 casualties, civilian casualties, Daily Trust newspaper in its headline is talking about over 200 casualties. It's a matter of really grave concern. We think that it is important that the federal government investigates thoroughly to find out. Then you must not discountenance the information released by the governor of Borno State, Professor Zulu, who said he had ordered the closure of that market, and they had closed the market some 5 years ago. In his own disclosure, they did not order the reopening of the markets.
I see.
So that means after ordering the closure 5 years ago, they probably reopened by themselves, the traders, without the government's permission. But that again, it's an indictment on the governor of Borno State, because equity does not help the indolent, it helps the vigilant. If the governor has ordered closure, why will the market be open? So it means that he himself did not do his work properly.
All right, let me bring Chris here, aka CKN, like I like to call him. Blueprint also ran with that story. NAF begins probe into accidental airstrike at Borno-Yobe border market. And, on your page on Facebook, you did mention that. I think what struck me was when you said Daily Times said over 200, Punch over 30, Vanguard over 50, but that the fact remains that Nigerian Air Force fighter bombed the market in Yobe today, killing several people. So it's a loss of life for so many people. How do you look at this? There's a probe that has been asked for, but what is your take on this lead?
Adora, if there are civilian casualties during that airstrike, my heart goes out to the families of those that were involved and they were killed. But I think we should try to run away from a one-way narrative as it concerns this matter. When the matter initially broke yesterday, the feeling, what we had was that, the Air Force mistakenly misfired and dropped bombs at a market between the Borno and Yobe border, and several innocent people were killed. And everybody ran with that. Our colleagues ran with that story. Then later in the day, the military now came out with precise information that actually the place was what the terrorist hall that was bombed. And they went terrorists place and support what the military did. As time went on, the Yobe and the Yobe and Borno governors or government came out with a statement also confirming that. So when you look at the narrative, so we shouldn't just run with the fact that, oh, it was a market that was bombed, civilians were killed. What were they doing there? I went further. I spoke with, after that story, later last night, as we were putting down our story, I spoke to two former army generals. They're talking of retired Major General. One was the commander, a former commander of Operation Safe Haven, and another Major General retired. And they confirmed to me, CKN, that place was a terrorist hub, and there have been surveillance for months on activities going on that. So am I own, in as much as I totally agree with the investigation being put together by the Nigerian Air Force and also Army and the military. But let us not try and make it look that the military deliberately bombed that area. We just lost a brigadier general just last week. And we've always asked, the Nigerian narrative has always been, oh, we are calling on America to come and assist us. And we've always said, what is America do? Why is it not bombing most of these terrorists? We asked the Tucano jets that were bought by the military, what are they using it for? When we see them moving from one point to another. So let us not totally condemn, let us wait for the investigation. But for me, if the information that I'm getting, that I've gotten, and which also the military, especially the army, has released, is anything to go by them, to go with them, then that issue of the place being a terrorist hub, I will run with it. So let us go after these terrorists, wherever they are. Yeah, there might be issue of civilian casualty here.
I hear you loud and clear, but if you look at the lead of this Nigerian newspaper, you know, what they wrote was deadly misfire. And that's the word that, you know, they chose as their lead. Deadly misfire, NAF probes Yobe airstrike, scores killed. So could it be that maybe behind the story there is a story, really?
I said, let me repeat myself. I am running with the military for now, until a proper investigation is carried out. Publishers of that publication are my very good friends of so many years. I don't, in whatever reason, want to doubt what they publish. But I'm giving a narrative as to what, because what happens most often than not is that we allow the terrorists, you know, to run with the narrative, and we go with it. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
That is what always happens, because those false information that came out definitely must have come from sympathizers or terrorists, as far as I'm concerned. That's my personal opinion. And we run with it. And everybody ran with that story until the military now, which they did, I think they did perfectly well this time around, by coming out quickly, because in the past, you see them keeping quiet. They don't say anything. You know, there have been in the past where we've seen misguided missiles and bombs being dropped on civilians mistakenly. But this particular one, I have said it and I'm repeating it, that I personally, CKN, spoke with two generals last night, and they confirmed to me, except they are lying, that place was a terrorist hub. And let me just drop this, and let me just say it, that the governor of Borno State have asked people to stay away from that market for about 5-6 years now. Why is it that that place is still being in use? That means that something is going on. So what I'm saying is, in essence, is that let us not just condemn the military. Let a proper investigation be done into this. But we still have to take this fight to these terrorists, wherever they are. And that is my personal opinion on this.
Sorry, the point must be made. The point must be made that the military, especially led by the Nigerian Air Force for this operation, did not deny that that airstrike was done. So I would not agree with any newspaper headline that suggests that it's accidental.
Yes.
It was a deliberate, coordinated attack on that place. So we cannot refer to it as accidental.
As a misfire.
Or a misfire. No way. And the point must be made. We owe a debt of duty to the military. When they make mistakes, we will be able to call them out. However, in this instance, it was a deliberate attack. We would be doing a disservice and perhaps be giving room to the sentiments that support terrorists and insurgents if we begin to refer to what happened as anything accidental or a misfire. So it's important that that is properly stated. While we also commend that the military did not just admit that that operation occurred. The military said clearly that they were even going to investigate about civilian casualties. They didn't say they will investigate misfire. They are going to investigate whether they have civilian casualties. And I think that is noble on their part.
Indeed. Sige, let me come back to you now for our next headline topper. Then, New Telegraph Authority ran with it. New Telegraph says Max ADC ignores INEC, names Imoke to chair National Convention. I'm sure it's Leo Imoke they are referring to. How do you look at this? I mean, any hope in sight for the ADC going ahead regardless?
Two wrongs does not make a right, my sister. We saw what happened in Lebanon during the PDP convention, factional PDP convention that took place in Lebanon, and how the court went ahead to annul that convention. And that is why Wike's faction is having a swear this morning. And they have even gone as far as taking over the secretariat of PDP. You people are in where is that place? I think it's Wuse 3 or something like that. I'm not an Abuja person. Somewhere in Wuse. And the police have withdrawn and handed over the place to Wike, and I saw them going around renovating the place. The ADCC should not make that mistake. We saw also what happened in Zanfara during the 2023 election, where a court judgment stopped, I think, the APC from doing certain things, and they went ahead to pick a candidate. I even went ahead, and I think there was to be an election, there was an election, I can't remember what happened. And the candidate of the APC, despite the fact that he overwhelmingly won the election, was his election was cancelled. That is why the current governor of Zanfara, who is a PBT member, has also moved to the APC. Funny, that is how funny our politicians are. But our advice, since the Supreme Court is sitting tomorrow, Tuesday, to look at the issues raised by the David Mark faction of the ADC. Let them wait and see the outcome of that decision by the Supreme Court. Let them not put the cart before the horse and decide to go ahead with the convention, knowing fully well that some people had just put some booby trap somewhere and some landmines, just as we have in Iran. Where's that coast where Strait of what? Where Iran has mined the whole place, and the America is making so much noise they're going to do this and that, but no ship is passing through. Let them wait for some days and see what the Supreme Court go. But we're having my own concern, and which I totally align with the NBA, is the statement issued by the NBA last week to courts and also to judges and also to lawyers that they should be careful with the kind of judgments they say, because there are already precedents in the Supreme Court on issues concerning parties, that any crisis concerning parties, it is the internal affairs of those political parties, and the court and litigants and the lawyers should try to stay away from it. So there was a strong worded letter signed by the president of NBA last week, asking the courts, the bar and the bench to be very, very careful when issues, because we've been seeing issuance of different orders by the court, and that in itself is putting this nascent, is it nascent? If after 20-something, it's no longer nascent, our democracy in danger. But I advise the David Mark part of the fashion of the ADC to just wait, tarry a while, and wait for the decision of the Supreme Court on this matter.
Okay, so let me come back to you. Still saying they ignore INEC, name Imoke to chair the convention. And while you're at it, maybe just quickly move over to our next headline, which says World Bank recommendations on fuel food imports could reverse economic gains. CPP wants Nigeria, and that's on Nigerian News Direct. But touch on the ADC matter, and then we go to that.
Okay. ADC really needs to put a lot of its premium and attention in the court process and see what they can do to reverse this anomaly that's been done. I do think that the interpretation of the INEC chairman on status quo antebellum is mischievous and disingenuous, because no court will make a preservative order that actually turns the leadership of the party on its head and makes the party rudderless. So I think that that was mischievous on the part of INEC, and the credibility of the chairman of INEC, as you see, has become a major issue. ADC seem to be wanting to resort to self-help because the judiciary in recent times has not been covering itself in glory with the kind of infamous decisions it keeps reaching. There are established decisions of the Supreme Court on disputes like this. So it's important that they tarry also, wait a while, so that it's been foretold by the INEC chairman that if they go ahead, they will end up suffering what the PDP suffered in Zanfara a few years ago. So I think they should concentrate their energy while also asking that the courts, the judges themselves, take heed of the admonition of Mazia Famosigwe and the Nigerian Bar Association, who have cautioned them about the steps they may take to derail the Nigerian democracy, while also urging that we as a people remain vigilant. The citizens of the Federal Republic need to be vigilant and take proactive steps to ensure that we preserve our democracy and ensure that there's a level playing ground for all parties.
All right, thank you so much. And I think that's a great place for all parties to, of course, end this newspaper review this morning, even though for some on a tragic note. But we hear you guys, you know, they did what they have to do, and maybe let's say collateral damage when fighting insecurity cannot be helped. Thank you so much, Chris Wandu, for joining us from Lagos, publisher CKN News, and have a wonderful day and the rest of the week.
Very much. Do have a wonderful week ahead.
Thank you. Let me please thank you so much for always coming in to aid in your voice. Thank you. Well, we'll be talking about our first conversation here, even though it didn't make the papers. It's still making the news that the outbreak of Lassa fever has become inspiringly, very frightening, with the cases that have been the spike, and more of the frontline health workers, in the fight have also been found as casualties to Lassa fever in the past few months. But we'll take a quick break, and when we'll come back, we will start the conversation in earnest. Stay with us.
The issues as they break. The multitude, the political figures, the state and non-state actors.
It's a serious threat to democracy. And our governments seem to be incapable of protecting.
The scheming.
This is not a period we should say power go. Every part of this country is equal.
The intrigues.
There can be no one person that is bigger than the party.
Deft moves and the momentous declaration.
We didn't get any protection. I'm not particularly against anybody.
We track and capture them all.
I don't believe we go for that reason in politics.
Follow in-depth analysis and no-holds-barred interviews.
Armed forces of the country is well capable. They need the political will.
Are they just waking up from sleep? Is there complacency?
Feel the pulse of happenings in the political arena on AIT Democracy Today. Widely acclaimed authority on politics. Monday to Friday, 7 p.m. Nigerian time. Focus Nigeria. It's a huge task, but we take it on.
The National Assembly is not doing hearing on insecurity in Nigeria. It is America that is doing hearing on insecurity in Nigeria.
Monday to Friday on Focus Nigeria, we identify the nagging issues.
So people put people in poverty deliberate misplacement of priorities, and brought people on their knees to suffer.
We seek answers to the tough challenges.
And because of
the former president, what I know is that he has not turned his membership card.
Has not been attending your meeting.
Leave that to us to deal.
There's no shying away from the issues.
The system is held accountable. The leaders are accountable for the funds, for the resources that they manage.
No sitting on the fence.
The same thing that made you live where you are may confront you.
Focus Nigeria, 10 a.m., Monday to Friday on AIT.
Well, thank you for staying with us. It's now, of course, that time where we'll take you to our first talking point this morning. And our conversation is not so pleasant. We're talking about Lassa fever, the spread, the spiking spread across states, and again, the deaths that we have experienced with some of the reports. And I have with me Professor Adamu Akiala, Director of Global Health and Infectious Diseases Control Institute, Nasarawa State University, KEFI. Good morning, Professor. It's good to have you.
Yeah, good morning. Thanks for having me. Good morning, Nigerians.
Absolutely. It's frightening, isn't it? I mean, when we're looking at 663 confirmed cases, 167 deaths between the beginning of the year and March ending, this is a serious national health concern, isn't it?
Absolutely. It is a serious national health, public health concern, and I strongly believe we would have declared a state of emergency in the public health sector, most especially because of the outbreak of Lassa fever. But in the last 2 weeks, there has been a very sharp decline. There has been a very sharp decline in number of cases, number of confirmed cases, and also number of deaths, case fatality rate. That also confirmed evidence from studies that once there is, once we have a rainfall, the cases of Lassa fever tends to decline. This is because most of the rodent tends to return back to the bushes, and so there is a sharp decrease in number of cases. So we saw that in the last 2 weeks, discovered that the weather, climatic, demographic indices shows that across the country, we experienced some rainfall, and so the cases started declining. So I strongly believe it's a public health, national public health concern. I strongly believe we would have declared a national emergency to that regards, but it also calls for a national quest in terms of handling Lassa fever cases.
All right. I mean, it's very profound, because what you said about a state of emergency, one would actually think perhaps maybe that would have been the route to go, considering the fact that in total, Nigeria has recorded over 955 confirmed death cases from 8,367 suspected infections since 2025, arriving to this now. And, in terms of percentages, it's considered that 25%, is a fatality rate.
Absolutely.
Higher than the 18.5 fatality rate, which of course was reported in 2025. Yep. But does this suggest that maybe the health authorities are struggling to manage this case?
Absolutely, absolutely, they are struggling. When you look at the case fatality rate in terms of figure, we do not actually look at the mortality epidemiology. So people that died of Lassa fever, do they really die of Lassa fever, or they also died as a result of other comorbidities? So a lot of people died, they got infected with Lassa fever, but it's not actually Lassa fever that killed them. It may be other comorbidities, such as hypertension, such as diabetes, such as even malaria, and all what have you. But it also brings to the national question, how did we get it wrong that year in, year out, we still see cases of Lassa fever and people are still dying? For example, in Taraba states, you find out that basically the higher mortality rate is even among the health workers. So does it show that we are not adhering to the infection prevention control protocol within our healthcare setting? Does it also show that a lot of our healthcare workers do not actually adapt to the national protocol for testing and also for case management? And so I want to preface my remarks by saying that we have a lot to do. Now, beyond having health workers, Japan, the Japan syndrome, and also have a very, very lack of adherence to infection prevention control protocol within our healthcare setting, we also have lack of ownership of the fight against Lassa fever by the subnational, by the states. So let me give you an example. The state still waits for the federal government through NCDC to send them kits. They still wait for federal government through NCDC to come and manage their cases for them, while cases that are coming up are within states, so there is no ownership. Could you imagine there are states that have to transport samples for Lassa fever victims to Abuja or to Benin, to Urua for testing? We refuse to build our public health laboratory. We would have learned lessons from COVID. When we were building labs for testing of COVID at various states, and then before we know it, COVID just came on, and we refused to repurpose our labs. We would have repurposed our labs to say that those labs testing for COVID would have upgraded them to test for Lassa fever and all what have you. So you send samples to Abuja before the results get out. It takes about 4 or 5 days. And so there are a lot of factors. In fact, one of the critical factors that is quite key that I've done a lot of need analysis for healthcare centers in my own state is that it's even the concept called WASH in health facilities, the concept of water, sanitation, and hygiene. You could imagine, my dear sister, that a lot of general hospitals, a lot of secondary and tertiary healthcare centers don't even have water facilities. So where does the non-pharmaceutical measures of washing of hands comes in? In fact, we don't even adhere to the national protocol in terms of hospital waste management, of course. So there are a lot of factors. They are quite multifactorial in nature. Lastly, I want to talk about the issues of funding. So there is no funding line in terms of managing emergencies.
Okay, before we get to funding, because you just mentioned about, demography and states and, ownership of the process.
Absolutely.
Now, cases are spread across 93 local government areas, which is about, 22 states. And some of the states at the front line of this spread is Bauchi, Ondo, Taraba, Benue, which amounts to 85.5% spread. Now, what is so significant about this is that some of these states are narrow within each other, What does this demography tell us? Why the states?
So the demography tells us within the hotspot mapping that they are vulnerable belts. They share the same climatic conditions. In fact, even the spatial rodent density is quite similar. So if you do some entomological research, you will discover that the species that houses the Lassa fever virus is quite similar. And it also shows that the transmission is less of human to human, but it is from the rodent to humans. Of course, that's why we started experiencing rainfall, and then the cases started dropping. So if you do a hotspot mapping for Lassa, where you see states with higher incidence of the viruses, you will discover that they are actually vulnerable belt. It also shows that we know the solutions. If we are able to do a hotspot mapping to know that these belts are quite vulnerable, the species of the rodent are quite unique in nature in terms of the spread of these states, it shows that we have gotten solutions already. Lassa has been with us for close to 50 years. As a country, we have not yet developed our testing kits. So I'm also looking forward to a national challenge where we can declare a state of emergency on our health sector and begin to see researchers and scientists developing test kits for the diagnosis of Lassa fever. At the moment, we don't have, because the conventional basic testing line is by PCR. So can we have a testing panel where people can even test at home? And then we have a very poor health-seeking behavior. People get sick, they presume that it is malaria, not knowing that it is Lassa. Before they get to the hospital, it takes about more than a week, so the incubation period gets established. So we have a lot to do as a country, and I strongly believe that such kind of conversation will spring up a national quest for us to combat Lassa fever.
Okay, so now let's look at some of the common misconceptions. Some people don't even know how the transmission is done, how maybe from rodent to household. Some say it's only when you eat the rat, or when you purchase bushmeat. There've been similar, misconception even when Ebola, was in the swing. So let's look at what really are the ways this is contracted.
Okay, so the rodent, the houses, the virus inhabits the rodents. And so they pass it through their fecal material, that's the rodent, and also through fluid that comes out of the rodent. And so the moment the rodent has an encounter or contact with food products. It can be, you know, the way we used to, you know, expose our food products into the environment. Once they get encounter with the fecal materials of the mouse, or the fluid coming out from the rats, they get contaminated through food products. Now, beyond the food product, even food utensils. But one of the major things is what you have also established is that we consume most of these rats as a source of protein. If you look at basically where there are outbreak of these cases, like in Ondo, like in Benue, they use this rat as source of protein. So beyond using this rat as a source of protein, also contamination of food product and food utensils are the major routes. But there is also the human-to-human transmission. And that's why you see that...
So regardless of the cooking process it goes through, it's still very dangerous.
Absolutely, it's very dangerous. And then you know that we don't also cook our food so well, you know, observing some food safety protocols in terms of we have leftovers. Most of our foods that we keep them as leftovers. They are quite open. And then there is an interface between the rodent and also the food product. And also there are issues of human-to-human transmission. And that's why you have cases of health workers getting infected from patients that visits them. But that is quite so, and that's why we have what is called the IPC, Infection Prevention Control, within our healthcare settings, so that health workers will have high suspicious index of people that they attend to.
So what type, because I've heard that there is a certain type of rat, is it multi-mammat rat? What type of rat really has this kind of
so the rat is not like the usual rat. I don't know how to communicate it. I don't want to use the scientific terminology so that our viewers, but the rat differs. It's not like the normal rats that we actually see. There are several species of rat within within our households, but this one is quite unique. The virus in the rat does not cause a disease in the rat. It does not cause. It's just like a normal flora. It's just like,
it's just a carrier.
Yeah, it's just like a carrier until it gets into human and other species. So there are research now showing that beyond infecting humans, they also infect other mammals, like cats, like cattle. So there has been research showing that beyond humans, they also infect other mammals.
So is this a rural problem?
It's not a rural problem. You can't say it is a rural problem. Yes, people that get infected are from rural, but they get moved to urban setting to seek for medical attention. So within a public health ecosystem, dynamics of disease transmission, we don't say it is rural. It is a disease of public health concern that affects both people in the rural and also because it's a disease that knows no border. So somebody can be infected within the rural setting. Of course, my sister, you have been visiting the village more often than sometimes, but you base in the urban community. So does not seemingly looks like it is a rural disease. It is a disease of public health important, and it poses public health threats.
And again, does it have any, connections to hygiene? People feel like if their environment is clean, then they will not be able to expose to it.
Absolutely. So if the environment is clean, the rodent or the rats cannot be able to have a space of habitation. Clean environment tends to keep away most of these rodents. They harbor environments that are quite dirty. So that brings to the national question about our sanitation protocol exercises. When we are growing up in the early 80s and late 90s, we have, I don't know how you call it, but in Hausa we call them dubagari. These are environmental health officers that go around to look at how dirty our environments are. They enforce sanitation. But over time, we just saw that disappeared. So I think that there is need for us to actually educate Nigerians, basically people within the hotspot belt, that there is need for proper sanitation. Sanitation goes beyond our household. It also goes beyond the community. But what is quite critical is that we need to also make sure that most of our healthcare centers have adhered protocol in terms of waste management. You'll be amazed that I was part of people, the ones selected to develop protocol on our healthcare centers or system waste management framework in country. We are just trying to develop the zero draft, where other countries of Africa, like South Africa and Kenya and Rwanda, have gone far in terms of managing. You can discover that we have zero attribute in terms of managing our hospital waste. And so it's quite key. So how do we manage hospital waste where the viruses are being, they flourish and they go back into the environment? So how do we decontaminate this so that a concept of wastewater surveillance? So we need to also put a searchlight on wastewater surveillance. The waste that we generate, either in industry or in hospital setting, how do we manage them? These are quite key issues.
Okay, so let's look at symptoms now. You know, one of the things you said that was quite scary is the fact that people may have to transport, you know, samples to be able to get tested.
Absolutely.
Now, what are the early symptoms of this disease, and how can we get diagnosis?
So the early symptoms of this disease, they present, most viral hemorrhagic fever have similar presentation. So from fever to down, nausea to vomiting. Sometimes the vomiting comes with blood, and also sometimes you find out that blood comes out from certain parts of the body, like the nose, nose bleeding, and also part of the eyes. So those are the clinical presentation. And then also fever encompasses a syndrome of a lot of signs and symptoms, rise in temperature, issues of chilling, and all what have you. So the presentation looks similar to that of malaria, except it has been tested and been confirmed. And that's why we are asking that as a country, that the Lassa fever has been with us for over some time, close to half a decade now. Is it possible for us to have our own testing panels? And so that brings to the national question that I want to pose. You know, if, for example, the wife of the president takes this as her pet project, or the president, through the Federal Minister of Health and Social Welfare, brings a national grand challenge to say that scientists across Nigeria, can we come up with a testing panel kits? And then you put a price tag.
Absolutely.
I can tell you that between 24 to 48 hours, you can see Nigerians that will tell you, hey, have the testing kits that has a higher sensitivity, higher specificity, and higher predictive value for the testing. So I think time has come for us to actually look inward in terms of our local content development, and also in terms of drug development for these cases. Because year in, year out, we have cases of Lassa fever. We wait for the most of the pharmaceutical products in terms of drug testing kits to come outside the country, while we have capacity to develop that in country.
You know, for a disease that was first described in the 1950s and probably medically described in 1969, it's taken a long walk. One would have thought that Nigeria by now would have found an inroad for curtailing the spread. But let's look at, you know, another conversation on quarantine. You talked about the symptoms. Happenstance in a family of four. Somebody, maybe the head of the home, or someone is seemingly presenting symptoms of Lassa fever. What happens to the other people present? Okay, so if the family has a very high health-seeking behavior, definitely that person will be taken to the hospital, and then if samples, if it goes through the checklist of the case definition for Lassa fever, it is established that the presentation clinically is that of Lassa fever. The person will first of all be isolated, and then there is a concept of contact tracing. People that got in contact with him will also be profiled and then quarantined. And samples will be taken from all the people that he has got in contact with, and then will be tested. Now, the testing turnaround time is what we are looking out for now, is that most of the states don't have capacity to test for Lassa fever. And it's kind of worrisome that COVID came and we developed our capacity in terms of testing. COVID left, and we could not. You could imagine that we have over 90 labs, private labs, that we are actually testing for COVID during the international travels and all what have you. We refuse to have a national policy to repurpose them. We would have
bring in these private labs into the laboratory, national laboratory network. So first of all, you quarantine, and then you take samples, and then you test. Anyone that is positive, then you go into treatment. But ribavirin is the drug for treatment. Most of the times, if samples are taken, then treatment commences before the results are being waited for.
Okay, so now, again, in terms of awareness creation, Lagos State, even though it's not perhaps classified as a Lassa fever state, have stepped up awareness and satellite awareness and prevention campaign. Now, what can be done to emulate that? Because I'm asking this because when I've listened to perhaps arguments that it's more able to transmit between men and women, but more to females.
Absolutely.
Where is the gender disparity?
Okay, I know you asked that because, of course, women have more contact with food products than men. Also, within the neighborhoods, they tend to be more within the neighborhood. So, like an African man always go out in search of food for the family. So, for sure, you find out that women tend to have more contact within the household. So, their contact with the rodent and also contact with human-to-human, people within the household. So, you tend to see that the disparity is a bit skewed towards more of female having more cases of Lassa fever than male. But let me also speak to the question you asked about Lagos. Lagos has stepped up its surveillance system in terms of tracking not only Lassa but a lot of diseases because their surveillance system is not as passive as other states. It is active. Lagos has the capacity to test for virtually category 3, category 4 pathogens because they have built a health system that is quite resilient, right from the primary healthcare down to the tertiary healthcare. And they have also developed models that I strongly feel other states can copy in terms of public health advocacy. Lagos has that. I was in Lagos some weeks back, and when I wanted to basically check my unit in my phone, just my credit unit in my phone. I'm not as rich as my sister that does a post-pay this thing. Just to check for my unit, and I saw a public health advisory on Lassa fever. So that goes a long way. This is because a lot of Nigerians tend to have more contact with their phones than any other things in terms of calls, in terms of, being on the internet. So Lagos has developed a very robust, what we refer to as risk communication, ability to communicate public health advisory framework to our own citizens. So I strongly believe other states can copy from it, and then we can see to how we can optimize and see how this framework can be adapted in other states.
Okay. Now, in terms of management of whether border crossing, transportation, travel, you've talked about it moving from place to place. And I know that, there's a prevalence of the disease around the West African and East African countries, like Guinea, Liberia, Sierra Leone, for instance. So how do we manage the exit and entry at the airports from now on? Because it's also a concern.
Absolutely. So we have a very porous border, be it a land border or be it in our ports, quite porous. I was privileged to be in Rwanda some months ago, and when we are at the airport, they still maintain their COVID non-pharmaceutical safety measures. Issues of social distancing are there. In fact, they obliged that whether we can take a monkeypox, COVID, and Lassa fever tests at the airport. So they have a very robust port health. In fact, they have a hospital B within. And then virtually everything was digitalized, coming to fill our forms online for the public health, like that, before we got into Rwanda. And while coming too, we have to, fill the form and then down our exit. When we reached Nigeria, there was nothing like that. So I think that we need...
No more COVID, no more measures.
No more measures, no more. In fact, they offered us free face masks. Is that okay? Because we are many that disembarked from the aircraft, and so they strongly believe that we'll be struggling with social distancing. So we need to put more surveillance alert on our ports, most especially land borders. We have not yet developed a very robust framework for surveillance system within our land borders because they are quite porous. It's only when you get to Lagos, you enter Badagry, nobody will stop you to check for anything that concerns health. Or you are looking at the north where you go through Katsina and Maradi down to Niger Republic. Nobody checks about your health. So I strongly believe that we need more on our borders, and then we can actually bring innovative surveillance framework. I want to say that in an era of AI and information technology, Israel has adopted the AI surveillance system for most of its borders. In fact, the parameter of Israel in terms of the geography is being manned by AI, so that you just cross the border, an AI platform will pick your temperature. There are AI platforms now that pick your temperature. In fact, my distance with you now, if it is being condoned by an AI platform, it can pick my temperature like that. So we can bring the digital health into this and optimize our healthcare system using digital platforms.
All right, thank you so much for that. Just to let you know that the reproductive cycle of the multi-mammate rat is between, May to June, and after that, the spread, increases from December to April. So hygiene is actually important.
So we can also target that period for our health awareness and health advocacy, and then go into bringing local dialects, and then begin to see how states can take ownership and do a lot of things.
Professor Adamu Agiale, Director, Global Health and Infectious Disease Control Institute, Nasarawa State University, KEFI, has joined us talking about Nigeria and Lassa fever, and he's told you the symptoms and what to be wary of. And remember, just because it's not COVID doesn't mean you shouldn't be aware. Cover yourself, protect yourself. The spread is easy. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Good morning.
All right, we'll take a quick break, and when we'll come back, we will be having, of course, what every Nigerian wants to see, the social media segment and his Kakaaki socials with Rena Obozage, and he has this Abadaish looking cloak coming on. I love it. I'll see you soon on the other side.
Break. The multitude, the political figures, the state and non-state actors.
There is a serious threat to democracy, and our government seem to be incapable of protecting
the scheming.
This is not a period we should say bow and go. Every part of this country is important.
The intrigues.
There can be no one person that is bigger than the party.
Deft moves and the momentous declaration.
We didn't get any protection. I'm not particularly against anybody.
We track and capture them all.
I don't believe we go for that reason in politics.
Follow in-depth analysis and no-holds-barred interviews.
Armed forces of the country is well capable. They need the political will.
Are they just waking up from sleep? Is there complacency?
Feel the pulse of happenings in the political arena on AIT Democracy Today. Widely acclaimed authority on politics. Monday to Friday, 7 p.m. Nigerian time. Focus Nigeria. It's a huge task, but we take it on.
Where is the law? National Assembly is not doing hearing on insecurity in Nigeria. It is America that is doing hearing on insecurity in Nigeria.
Monday to Friday on Focus Nigeria, we identify the nagging issues.
Some people put people in poverty deliberately, deliberate misplacement of priorities, and brought people on their knees to suffer.
We seek answers to the tough challenges.
And because of
For the former president, what I know is that he has not turned his membership card. He has not been attending your meeting.
Leave that to us to deal.
There's no shying away from the issues.
The system is held accountable. The leaders are accountable for the funds, for the resources that they manage.
No sitting on the fence.
The same thing that made you live where you are may confront you.
Focus Nigeria, 10 a.m., Monday to Friday on AIT.
Hello, everyone. Excellent morning to you. This is Kakaaki Social. I'm Onoshorena Obozege. It's a good week, and it's my absolute pleasure to have you join us this Monday morning. Well, not so nice. We'll start in the news and the stories from the space of social media with the said accidental airstrike that has reportedly killed and injured several individuals at Jili Market in Gerdam local government area of Yobe State. A resident who spoke to AIT News on the condition of anonymity revealed that the incident happened on Saturday as the traders were busy undertaking their business activities at the market. Another eyewitness who visited Gerdam Specialist Hospital and sent some of the pictures that we have added that several victims were receiving emergency medical treatment and the hospital was getting out of space. He narrated that the military fighter jet was trailing the movement of some Boko Haram insurgents in their enclave who later went to the affected markets to collect levies from the residents, and that was the account that was shared with us right there. We've seen reports by several newspapers putting numbers to it, but we take reactions from the conversation this morning on our YouTube channel at Africa Independent TV. Those that you put there while newspaper review went on, could have reactions now. Short break, would return to Kakaaki Social in a bit.
Gender Agenda is where policy meets people. It's a bold policy literacy platform bridging the gap between decision makers and women across every sector. From parliament to politics, from leadership to governance, from peace to economy, development, human rights. From Nigeria to the rest of Africa, Gender Agenda amplifies voices too often excluded, ensuring every voice counts. Through compelling storytelling, social impact dialogue, thought-provoking documentaries, town halls that lean on data and research, we raise the bar. Gender Agenda, every Friday, 4:30 p.m. live on AIT and on AIT's YouTube channel at AIT Live.
My name is Adora Sydney Jack, and this is Gender Agenda.
Gender Agenda. Women rising.
In the hallowed chambers where laws are forged and a nation's destiny is decided.
This is your parliamentary program, Inside the Parliament on AIT.
Voices rise, opinions clash, debates ignite.
We cannot be apologetic in the discharge of our constitutional duties as lawmakers of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
The burden of proving that the elections have been conducted peacefully and in accordance with law must shift to INEC.
From the Senate to the House of Representatives, this is where policies are tested, laws are crafted, and authority is held to account.
We spoke to some lawmakers on their opinions of the document presented by the president.
Every motion, every argument carries the hopes of millions.
We need more hospitals, more health clinics in communities so that they can effectively take care of the primary health need of our people.
The questions are tough. The exchanges are intense.
Mr. President, you can have your way, but I will have my say. You can use the gavel, and I will use my voice.
And those who want the proviso are 55 in number. And so the proviso says.
But who truly stands for the people? Who is driving the change that defines our tomorrow?
Let us tell ourselves the truth. Why are we here talking about LGBT, GTBT, whatever?
Get the answers on Where Nigeria Decides on Inside the Parliament on AIT every Tuesday, 4:30 p.m.
Information.
Education.
Entertainment.
It's more than a cliche. It's a way of life. It's our way of life.
On Kakaaki, the African voice.
3, 2, 1, your life.
Talking to the people that matter.
On the issues that matter.
keeping you up to speed on what you need to know
and how you need to know.
That's Kakaaki, the African Voice.
Monday through to Friday, 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. on your channel of choice, Africa Independent Television.
Kakaaki, the African Voice.
The more you look,
the more you see.
The stories now break online. Don't miss anything from our real-time updates and exclusive content. Follow and participate in discussions on live TV studio programs to shape the narratives. Subscribe, engage, and share from AIT.live at AIT_online on X, AIT Online on Facebook, Official AIT Live on Instagram, TikTok, and Threads on YouTube. Stay connected with AIT. On air, online, on live. People, politics, and power brings context and clarity to issues and events in governance, democracy, and development. On People, Politics, and Power, we feature people who shape the events and define the issues.
A lot of the agencies are still struggling with implementation of freedom of information.
The government should come. We need Nigeria to work.
We examine the interplay and interaction of politics with power and their impact on policies and the people.
It's about getting the system to deliver the kind of electoral outcome that people will be happy with.
People, Politics, and Power with Imoni Amarere.
Gender Agenda is where policy meets people. It's a bold policy literacy platform bridging the gap between decision makers and women across every sector. From parliament to politics, from leadership to governance, from peace to economy, development, human rights. From Nigeria to the rest of Africa, Gender Agenda amplifies voices too often excluded, ensuring every voice counts. Through compelling storytelling, social impact dialogue, thought-provoking documentaries, town halls that lean on data and research, we raise the bar. Gender Agenda, every Friday, 4:30 p.m. live on AIT and on AIT's YouTube channel at AIT Live.
My name is Adora Sydney Jack, and this is Gender Agenda.
Gender Agenda. Women rising.
In the hallowed chambers where laws are forged and a nation's destiny is decided.
This is your parliamentary program inside the parliament on AIT.
Voices rise, opinions clash, debates ignite.
We cannot be apologetic in the discharge of our constitutional duties as lawmakers of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
The burden of proving that the elections have been conducted peacefully and in accordance with law must shift to INEC.
From the Senate to the House of Representatives, this is where policies are tested, laws are crafted, and authority is held to account.
We spoke to some lawmakers on their opinions of the document presented by the president.
Every motion, every argument carries the hopes of millions.
We need more hospitals, more health clinics in communities so that they can effectively take care of the primary health need of our people.
The questions are tough. The exchanges are intense.
Mr. President, you can have your way, but I will have my say. You can use the gavel, and I will use my voice.
And those who want the proviso are 55 in number. And so the proviso says,
but who truly stands for the people? Who is driving the change that defines our tomorrow?
Let us tell ourselves the truth. Why are we here talking about LGBT, GTBT, whatever?
Get the answers on Where Nigeria Decides on Inside the Parliament on AIT every Tuesday, 4:30 p.m.
Apologies and welcome back. There was a mix-up somewhere. As I mentioned, so it's time for reactions that an accidental airstrike has reportedly killed and injured several individuals at Jili Market in Gidam local government area of Yobe State. A resident who spoke to AIT News on the condition of anonymity revealed that the incident happened on Saturday when the traders were busy undertaking their business activities at the market. Another eyewitness who visited the Gidam Specialist Hospital and sent these pictures that you see added that several victims were receiving emergency medical treatment and the hospital was getting out of space. It narrated that the military fighter jet was trailing the movement of some Boko Haram insurgents in their enclave, who later went to the market affected to collect levies from the resident. And these are the pictures from the hospital right there of people receiving treatment and those that have been killed, sadly. Let's take reactions from our YouTube channel. As we'll start with this one, over to you at Africa Independent TV. We need answers. Citizens for nothing. On YouTube, as we reviewed the papers, this user Martins Aboki says, it is not meant to be an accident strike. It is a deliberate strike, and anyone in a closed market trading with Boko Haram is an enemy. I think that is Martins Waboke. Another user, Havana Advantage, says, I am sorry to say, but the people in the region have accepted their fate. Boko Haram live and operate in those communities. Another user from African Independent TV on YouTube is Kunle Abundance, who says, bad intelligence by the NFA. If they have intelligence, then send in troops. Bad judgment again. It shows we don't have the process to fight them. And Victor Taimba says, why do we have repeated airstrike on the innocent Nigerians? How professionals are these Air Force operating in the field? Or is it just the radicalized bandit into the Nigerian Air Force doing this job? Those are the reactions that we have right there, but we have definitely from another side, Buka Meina says, there is no deadly misfire on any market. I support the military and the state government. Coming from Martins or Buka right there. Now, those conversations and reactions were from our YouTube channel while the newspaper review was live. Away from that, a list of 48 individuals and groups allegedly linked to terrorism financing in Nigeria has been released by the federal government. Now, this list was issued by the Nigeria Sanctions Committee, NSC, which designates persons and organizations suspected of involvement in financing terrorism. Among those named by the committee is Simon Ekpa, alongside several others linked to proscribed groups such as Indigenous People of Biafra, IPOB, Ansaru, and Islamic State of West African Province. Also listed in earlier sanctions disclosure is Tuka Mamu, who was accused of facilitating ransom payment to terrorist groups. What is the way forward after this naming? Would there be shaming that and those, the questions that netizens are asking, then we bring them in at this point. Those are the names right there, 48 of them. Now this user, Make It Make Sense, says, laughing out loud, law, he says, they think we are fools. What should we do with this? These lists are the bandit leaders and not sponsors. If they can't list the politicians that are sponsoring them, then everybody should keep short. Another user too, coming from X, Onwa Nke Maju, says, if the federal government spends hundreds of billions to rehabilitate terrorists, and terrorists routinely captures military hardware from security forces, etc., The government is the biggest sponsors. Another thought also coming from X, Tony AJ says the people have lost trust in the government to the point that they express doubt when a list like this comes out. Who are we to blame? It's a skewed list on the surface and definitely hiding something. I personally don't trust this. Some of your thoughts right there. Mr. Reuben says, so now am I going to be looking for them by name or what? Where is their pictures? And Comrade Omoyoma Emmanuel says, releasing list has never been a problem, but dealing with the sponsors has. Those are the conversations right there. Well, it's been a long week online for the chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, Professor Joash Amupitan. He's currently facing serious backlash with accusations of partisanship and growing calls for him to resign. Now, this all started after alleged old social media posts of his surfaced over the weekend. Posts that support President Bola Ahmed Tinubu and criticize the obedient movement of Peter Obi. But INEC has come out to deny it. They are insisting that their chairman is not on social media at all. However, that denial has raised even more questions, and that's because the same statement INEC later released was already posted verbatim, word for word, by a presidential aide, Dada Olusegun, about 22 hours earlier. That detail didn't sit well with Nigerians online, and it's only added fuel to the criticism, as I see. So tech-savvy netizens have attempted to get details using creating the X account in question that they claim is owned by Professor Amupitan. You would see what they found out after reactions. But first, we have to go back to 2023, where the said posts and support and partisan posts by the professor are coming from. So someone like Okoduro Oro, for example, on the 17th of March 2023, had made this post, and it says, obedient and lies are 5 and 6. This was how they spread lies during NSAS. Just check the date on the second picture with what Aisha Yusufu shared, and he attached the pictures. And then the said account, we're still in the last slide, please. The said account of the professor, Joash Amupitan, then came and responded, and he says they are evil in the 24th century. That's obedient are evil in the 24th century. And then another post also that he also reacted to was a post by Dayo Israel, the chairman of the APC Youth Wing, that he said also in 2023, but this time March 18th, he says, today, I rejoice not just for delivering my polling unit, but for winning 7 out of the 10 polling units in my nearby Igbo-dominated community, where APC have never won. They always vote opposition, but this time, I sat with the youth of the community and forged a partnership. And then the same account, Professor Joash Amupitan, says victory is sure on same day. But he has denied all of these. Let's now see. So INEC Nigeria, which is the verified account of the electoral umpire on X, had shared this post on the 11th of April 2026, just right here, 11th of April 2026. And the date that you see here, you see 1816, which is 16 minutes past 6 p.m. of April 11. However, word for word, everything, punctuation, everything, I mean everything, it was shared earlier the previous day, which is 10th of April 2026, by 12 minutes past 8 p.m. by presidential aide, Daddy Dio, who is Dada Olusegun on X. And then the conversations definitely came in. Let's just take one reactions, because there are 1,001 things going on with INEC and the boss right now online. Better Country then says, so, dear independent INEC Nigeria, an aide of the president posted your own statement before you. How did he get the statement? He wrote it for you, or you wrote the statement? kept it in your archive for later posting, and he hacked your archive to grab and post a statement. Please explain this to me like I'm a 5-year-old, because your statement says the confirmed partisanship of your chairman is not making logical sense, like 22 whole hours after an independent body posted before the official body, and word for word. Harry, the Digot, says, in case Professor Joash Amupiton thinks he is denying that an account in front of his kid, he says, observe with me. The two-factor authentication procedure of the email registered to the now denied X account brings you a certain phone number that ends with 99. Now, take a look at the phone number on Amupiton's CV and what it ends with. Even his other email, which is an institutional email of Unijust, happens to be the authentication backup email. Is this mere coincidence? And then he attached these that you see at my left, your right. But let's expand them in the next slide. Great. So the Yahoo Mail, as observed by those users, it says amupiton@yahoo.com. So if you're making an attempt right now to maybe access that account, it gives you this to say, oh, we've sent a verification code to you, access one of those things. So, but the phone number that is being contested is this one by my right that is highlighted in red right here. So netizens have been quick to say, okay, beyond Truecaller, let's even see who owns this. So from this, they made an attempt to send the account money using OPay, which is basically using your phone number. And what has been given them is Joash Ojo Amupiton, the exact name of the INEC boss. But the boss has insisted that I'm not on social media. But again, a video has been trending that he says, I see all of those things on social media. And the question, how do you see things on social media without an account? You may have a burner account, fake account you used to respond to people as a public figure, but then you cannot say, Gabadaya, I don't have any account, cha-cha. So netizens have been kind enough, sending him 100 naira, sending him 10 naira to say, well done, Sife, for your resignation, but that's not my conversation. Let's now see another reaction to this one. Pastor B then sort of solves the mass. He says, my point is that all these doesn't solve anything. We need constitutional amendment to prevent the president from appointing his loyalists to that position. If this man resigns, how are you sure the president will not appoint another loyalist? So yeah, those are the thoughts right there. Well, away from that, there are also reactions to President Bola Tinubu's speech in Bayelsa State, where he said, I hear you are complaining about fuel prices, but you need to thank God that you are better off than those in Kenya and other African countries. Well, he was speaking in Bayelsa over the weekend, and that was after he inaugurated projects, including the 60-megawatt gas-fired independent power plant and the new Yanagwa City Road in the state. Let's listen to him.
From various angles of the economy, the fuel prices is biting hard. But look around, let's just thank God together that you are better off. Listen to them in Kenya, in other African countries, what they are going through. We will not look back. We will continue to find ways to ameliorate the suffering.
What you make of this comparison, that Asunshao says that comparison no really solve the problem on ground. Nigerians are asking to be better than others, and not asking, rather, Nigerians are not asking to be better than others. We just want a system that works for us. Fuel price is hitting hard, and people are feeling it daily. Leadership should focus more on easing the burden, not comparing struggles. Another thought coming from X to Nachi says, this is to tell everyone that even if you give Bola Tinubu 100 years, absolutely nothing will change. He will continue looting Nigerian treasury and turn around to tell Nigerians to stop complaining about the economy. But thank God that they are alive. Yeah, that's what he says right there. So more conversations and reactions to this. Don Dada says they only compare us with other countries on what's favorable to them. Sir, are we better off than Kenya in security? How about healthcare? How about the state of their primary and secondary schools? Two more thoughts. The guru says, as a Kenyan living in Kenya, fuel price hasn't changed. Even a coin since the American-Iran war began. It says the supply is constant, except few isolated cases of fuel distributors hoarding the product with hope of price increase, but generally we're good. Congratulations to you right there. And definitely we have Aban Sadika. It says Jagaba 2 times. We are very happy to the wonderful administration of our good leader and leadership as Siwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Well, there's always someone on the other side of the room, but we have to run because of the mix-up we had. We used part of our time. I apologize. But thank you so much for being a part of the program this morning. I'll see you again tomorrow. I am Rena OBO everywhere on social media. We can always talk before we see the next day. Stay with us. The program has not ended.
Don't miss anything from our real-time updates and exclusive content. Follow and participate in discussions on live TV studio programs to shape the narratives. Subscribe, engage, and share from AIT.live at AIT_online on X, AIT Online on Facebook, official AIT Live on Instagram, TikTok, and Threads on YouTube. Stay connected with AIT. On air, online, on live.
True strength. What defines it? The brilliance of a player? Or when a team comes together to win? A solo beat? Or the rhythm of many? The flair of one dancer, or the art of a troupe. One distinct voice, or the beauty of the symphony. At FCMB Group, we build ecosystems, empower communities, and create the future. Because we believe it's not just one, but the power of the group that delivers the future we all desire. FCMB.
My baba, they always say, for market, every day gets your own wahala. Sometimes people go on scam you. But Baba say, no be by gra. You must cool down, dey sharp. Because with OPay payment, your money go enter sharp, no story. But inside market, anything fit happen. One day, we no see phone again. My Baba remember OPay USSD lock, dial *955*131#. Baba press am, lock account. From market woman to driver, from small boy to big man. Now OPay, they protect people like us. My Baba fit sell, press phone, collect POS, and still they teach me price. And when they don't tire am, go just tap OPay night guard. We no fear for this our hustle life. Now OPay be the people payment shield.
Football lovers, movie lovers, family entertainment fans, get ready for something big because StarTimes is giving you Over Jara. For a limited time, when you recharge for 2 months, you get upgraded to the next bouquet free. That's more sports, more movies, more kids shows, more entertainment at no extra cost. Over Jara. StarTimes. Enjoy digital life.
Cube,
Unwrap joy. Unleash taste.
And from that, we come straight. Social media was quite buzzy this morning. Very interesting outline. And our reviewers did send in our own online reviewers and participants sent in their updates and highlights and feedback. Thank you so much for sending those in. We appreciate it. Now, we're talking Ezendibo in diaspora. That's what we're looking at, our second conversation, considering the fact that we've seen a lot of controversies around this, and again, the ban by Nigeria on what they call Ezendibo in diaspora because of some of the hostilities that have been met out to Nigerians by the host communities in some countries like South Africa and even in Ghana. That's of last year. I have Chief William Ezugu Eze Ogbozara III of Opi Kingdom, Nsukka, Enugu State, in Nigeria, not in diaspora. So let me just put that out there. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us.
Thank you, our viewers.
It's great to have you. Okay, so let's just get straight into the meat of the matter. Now, Ezendibo is a very symbolic word in Igbo land, but then Ezendibo in diaspora, regardless of any community or wherever it is outside the country, do you think that the establishment of this symbolic title abroad genuinely crosses a line, especially when you are in another man's country? They have several or certain cultural norms, and this comes in within that community. Do you think that it's crossing the boundary of the host communities?
Well, thank you. You see, as far as I'm concerned, the Igbo culture is a culture that so many people are interested to see and watch. We have a lot of cultural styles that is unbeatable everywhere in the world. And when you talk of Ezendibo in diaspora, well, if not that some miscreants normally uses such things to do some certain unrivaled things, if I believe is a kind of selling Igbo culture outside the world. But because of most of the people there, they normally use it for a different ball game, a different fraudulent manners. And they dent at the same time the Igbo culture. And based on that, you will now find out the Yohanese in Igbo, which is the umbrella, this thing of the Igbo as a tribe. Those are people who talk about the Igbos, who represent us in terms of cultural group, become against it. But as far as I'm concerned, if not because of, just like I said earlier, the miscreant who uses it to do fraudulent things outside the country or outside the Igbo land, I don't see anything wrong in it.
Okay, so I'm sure you saw the feedback from the Minister of Foreign Affairs State, Bianca Ojukwu, when she spoke on this matter, and she said that, it has no traditional authority because, again, the Igbo leadership has clarified that such titles hold no authority outside the home. And so the ban of the titles of the Ezendibo abroad is hereby banned. What does that mean? In terms of one, you've talked about the significance of this for the Igbo culture, for Igbos in diaspora, but she's also saying that there are boundaries by host communities, and there are people whose norms and cultures can actually be assaulted by just having the presence of another country's culture supersedes leadership in that ecosystem. So do you think that in between cultural and heritage significance and the need for respecting country rules and policies, isn't it important to take a back step now?
Well, in most cases, even in Nigeria, you find out that Igbo culture, most of the places who practice it in Nigeria, like Ezendibo in Lagos, there's Ezendibo in Lagos that have been in jail for some years now, that have been locked up for years, for over 6-7 years now, without even granting him bail. So at times you look at it, to me, I look at it as being envy.
Is he locked in jail for a criminal offense or just for the sake of
just for the sake, he's the Ezendibo. I think either Okota or something of that nature in Lagos. And maybe one way or the other, he spoke of our dear brother, Nandi Carlos, something of that nature that led into his detention, not minding maybe he represents the Igbo people around that circle of Lagos. Then, again, I will say, too, that even if you are going to take the title, you're going to use the language as in Igbo to represent us, I think they must come home to be able to meet the real traditional institution in Igbo land. You know, to be able to get a letter that we are now, if you have been accepted or if you have been given that letter, you can now represent the Igbo culture. But this thing is that people at times that when they feel they have made money, they attempt to assume an office that has never existed. And they will now prepare themselves culturally, start parading themselves as they say in Igbo. That has no taproot anywhere. You understand? But if possibly, that we can even say that we can come up with a kind of letter or whatever, that for you to be a Igbo anywhere, you must come home. Either every Igbo man has where he's coming from. It's either your state, your town, or there's nowhere you are coming from that you don't have a real traditional ruler there. Go and get a letter from a traditional ruler. If he gives you a letter that you are qualified, clarifying you are from that particular community or whatever, or kingdom, then you can now, say, I'm officially recognized at home. But not when you are not officially recognized at home, you now go outside the country to parade yourself as Eze. Using the name Eze is like making mockery of Ezeship in Igbo land. Let me put it that way.
I see.
Because in Nsukka today, I'm the only existing person who is Eze, and at the same time Igwe. I took over the Ezeship from my father in 2013 when he died. He's a monarch. My father took over from my grandfather in 1964 when he died. So that's the Ezeship. But being that the government, because of maybe politics or otherwise, the Ezeship, they were unable to recognize Ezeship in where I'm coming from, Enugu State. That was how I divided my kingdom into two and was able to get the Igwe ship. So to get that government recognition, and that is why I'm the only existing Igwe today in Igbo land. Let me don't even say Enugu State, right? Yeah. So this thing has steps. All these things have steps. So by the time you now go to outside country and assume a portfolio or a seat that never existed, that is where you start having this problem. Like there's a popular one in Ghana. They say Igbo in Ghana. The young man is very popular. He eats and dines with every big man in Ghana. But the thing is, the taproot must start from home.
So you're saying that this also could lead to fake elevation of people?
Of course. Of course, that's what I'm saying. Like for example, let's assume, let me use Cotonou as an example.
Okay.
You are now, parading yourself as Ezebo in Cotonou. And somebody like me who is original Eze from the east or from Igbo land happens to come Cotonou, and you are doing a ceremony. It's I will never attend your ceremony. I will never. Because the Ezeship has no taproot. Your Ezeship have no taproot, and that is why I cannot, for any reason, happens to come there, then I decide to come to your ceremony because you are Ezebo in Cotonou or anywhere. Maybe because you must have made some money, and therefore you assume that office. So to me, they must have an origin, and that origin is for you to go home and start from home. You don't have to say Ezebo. You could at the same time say I'm the leader of people in so-and-so country or so-and-so state or town. But using Ezebo can as well make you to boast there that you are the, even if you go to the southeast, you are the Eze of the whole Igbo land.
Okay, so let's look at the terminology, the word Ezigbo, because I know that the Southeast Council of Traditional Rulers has suggested using the title Onyendu Ndi Igbo, leader of Ndi Igbo, leader of Igbo people at that space, instead of using Ezigbo. So is it the title per se that is the problem, or the assumption of any leadership without the sanctity of that title being originated from the state where the person comes from in Nigeria?
No, what I'm trying to say in different manner, in different way, is that, look, for the institution, for us to have the real thing, for us to have the original people, you don't have to answer it anywhere using that Ezigbo. The moment you are pronounced, the moment you are called Ezigbo, means that you have fully assumed the office of Eze, which between me and you are not Eze. It's like rubbishing that name. It's like cajoling that name. And based on that, that is why we said no. We can come up, like you just said, come up with another name. You still lead your people there. They can still come and converge in your place, but not that particular Ezigbo. I have never heard where they say Obof Enugu, or Obof Abuja, or Obof Kano. Right?
Because an Oba is an Oba.
Is an Oba is an Oba.
Yes.
But I don't see why most of us in that side of the country at times usually go out of their way on certain things. You have never seen where you say, this is the Emir of Abuja. This is the Emir of Enugu. You can have something like Saraki. Is it Sariki? Sariki of this, Sariki of that, which is not Emir. The Ezeship is the main title, main name in the equality of Oba, Emir, and, Eze. So if you are touting with Ezeship outside the country, outside your Igbo land, that means you are making caricature of the whole traditional institution, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, so let's look at guidelines and principles of engagement. Ohaneze Ndigbo has come out to, strongly condemn this. However, critics have also said that wouldn't it have been better if Ohaneze had given the principle of or understanding of how certain engagements of Ndigbo outside diaspora can happen without infringing on the rights of the people? Because here we say on one hand, the desecration and the sanctity of the stool of the Eze, with that title, Eze Ndigbo. Then on the other hand, you have hostilities from host communities or countries who have given room for other people from diaspora, from Nigeria, to come in. So who then lays the rules? Who then makes the principle of engagement and the guidelines? Is it from Ohaneze Ndigbo or from the Traditional Rulers Council?
Well, the thing is that we're still looking at it. From what you said, that particular order should come from the Traditional Rulers Council in the Southeast. And to me, if they are able to come up with such a policy, then it is now for Ohaneze Ndigbo to now announce it or use it to spread the news. You understand?
Yes.
That's the way I look at it. The way I feel that if we should go that way, it will be so comfortable and so nice for us to, not question of Ohaneze Ndigbo will say this, then the traditional institution will say the other thing another day. It doesn't rhyme. So to me, those who are watching me today should know. Most of the traditional rulers, we should come together and they'll be able to call a spade and come out with one particular statement or what they can be answering or what the name they should be using as in the Igbo, whom all the Igbo people converge in every country or state or town you are in. Not a question of using that name Ezendibo. That Ezendibo should be totally abolished. And I believe the traditional institutions will be able to take note of it, and we are on it now. Ohaneze, yes, is the representative of the Igbo in Nigeria, like Arewa and rest of other things. You understand? So, in most cases, we work hand in hand with them. Because there are people that always get to the government, always say something on behalf of the Igbos, not the traditional rulers. Because you have so many traditional rulers, you have, in every state, they have their own traditional ruler organization, members in the organization in that state. Then the generator of the Southeast have the same thing. You must come out from your state before you can now go to represent to the general Igbo traditional institution. You must come from your state. And not only coming from your state, you must come out from your local government before you can now come to the state. Then the state now appoints who represent them within the circle. Before the total Southeast will now recommend who represents them in national. So that is how it goes. So at the same time, we are now saying that in order not to cause problem for other innocent Igbo citizens outside the country or wherever you are, we have to curtail it. Just like you said, I saw when the South Africans were, where they were totally against it, because they felt it become, even in Ghana was fully, if this doesn't happen, how can you come and create a kingdom in our place? That kind of and that is how the innocent will be killed, massacred, because of what? Because one single person has an ambition to answer a name or a title, which is not supposed to be. So I think holistically, by God's grace, we are trying to get to it.
Okay, so I hear you, and I hope that it's in line again, whatever the resolutions are done with also the diplomatic relations with those countries to be able to pass down whatever the outcomes are. But in the meantime, let's look at preservation of heritage and culture. In the absence of this, some of these persons, from the Southeast, the Indibo region, most of them or some of them have never or haven't been back home for decades, for many years. And some were born there and could only interpret Igbo culture from what they see from, communities and clusters like this. So in the absence of this, what would be perhaps your advice to amplify, create awareness, and retain the custody of heritage and culture by those communities?
Well, like I said earlier, that having such a thing in every state or country, minus that name, that tag, Eze.
So take away the Eze and
Take away the Eze. If you watch at it, you'll find out that every Sunday, you have different cultural groups having meetings in every town where they are. Different towns, different villages having their meetings in everywhere they are. Like in Abuja, if I'm from OP, they have OP Town Union. So we'll have it at Town Union, whereby most of us go for the meeting on Sundays, once in a month. This happens to all over Igbo land, or rather all over the whole state from the Southeast. Even not only Southeast. Delta, part of Delta is there, like Anioma and rest of them are there. They all have meetings where, if you are a father, if you are a woman, if you are married, you and your husband, is either your husband goes for that of men, your wife goes to that of the married men from that particular area. And that is where they display their culture. Like we have what they call, what we normally do, end of year. That end of year, some people contribute money. If you have money, you can donate cow. This brings us together again, end of the year. So such a thing could still help a lot. Not a question of undermining the institution at home by the same name. we have all this in place up to now, up to tomorrow.
Yes.
We have it in place. This kind of meeting, Thai union organizations and all those things. And mind you, the Thai union organizations are so powerful.
Absolutely.
They're so powerful that most of them contribute what they take home. Like now, let's assume we are building a town hall. Each member from that particular town in the union, either you are in Lagos, or you are in Abuja, or you are in London, they all come together to contribute money to send home to build whatever they are building there, either hall or whatever. So that alone helps us a lot, can still do the needful without undermining where you are, where they will now, like, South Africa, they're already very, very, very much angry with Nigerians because of our exhibitions there. At times you might see some South Africans, at times they will just get upset and say, why that we don't have our women again, Nigerians are taking their women, because Nigerians are so, everywhere they are, you must notice a Nigerian out of their style of life, So now you descend again down into cultural exposure there and bringing your own culture down that undermine their own, outwitting their own culture. So you find out, in terms of social life, Nigerians are taking over. You now come again, the one they have, you see them dancing, all their women dancing, all the men dancing with their this thing, helmet as if they are going to war. You now want to come and disturb them again. I'm just giving an example like South Africa. You understand? So they must be against it. So let us manage our usual cultural town union we have been using everywhere, in everywhere we go. And it still brings us together everywhere. Okay, so
this is Diaspora. I know that there has also been some level of conversation, a journey on this SND, so I'll give you a bit of context. On June 1st, 1993, Barrister Ogbonna Tyson Nadi, who lives in Kano, long after the Civil War ended, they said here, was chosen and proclaimed Eze, bracket, Sarakin Igbo, of Kano land. He was also the third Eze Igbo, or king of the Ndi Igbo, and that was then. And then, of course, somebody succeeded him after that, and thereon and therein, it has continued in Kano State, and no one has complained. Why is this one in Diaspora so dynamic? And will all of these rules and interventions you talk about work across the Igbo communities, wherever they find themselves, including Nigeria, and not situated only in Diaspora?
No, like what I said earlier, this town union gets to the extent you are village, you are town, you are state, citizens of the state, and at the same time, Nigeria as a whole.
So you're saying that...
in wherever they are.
Yeah, so the outcomes will affect all of the communities, both Diaspora and in Nigeria.
Of course, yes.
To be reviewed.
Yeah, of course, yes.
All right. Now, following awareness, now, is it also important that when this happens, this awareness is taken down, domesticated to the villages? Because most of the time, it is the young ones who migrate that take this culture with them.
Yeah, I quite agree with you. Because at my age today, I don't think whether I can migrate anywhere again. Talk less of where I've been nailed as a traditional ruler in my kingdom. So I can hardly migrate anywhere.
Yeah.
I say, I've used people like you come to Abuja and watch people, look fresh again and go back home.
Well, I'm glad they were focusing on Eze and Igbo, because I've not heard Eze one in Igbo in Diaspora before. Maybe we will look at that, because I know that there are also unions for women and there are structures and hierarchy for Igbo women in Diaspora.
That one was still about to come out. That one was still about to come out.
We've not made so much noise as the men, so we can get away with all of that. I've been speaking to Chief William Ezuku Eze Obozara, the third of Opi Kingdom on Nsukka, Enugu State. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Vias.
Thank you.
And God bless.
Absolutely. And with that, from one kingdom to this kingdom, we're about to take it away and say that's where we'll draw the curtain this morning. And I am Adora Sidney Jack. Take care of yourselves, Anisha. And whatever you do, please do stay safe. See you again tomorrow. Goodbye.